To be honest, I wasn't expecting much going into the first Berserker Khazan. I've played a lot of Souls-type games, and up till now, there's only really been one that I felt matched the quality of From Software's staple series. I dismissed this game originally due to many reasons. The big, burly, generic-looking white guy on the box art didn't really pull me in. The somewhat edgy, cosmic horror design of the early game areas and characters didn't really do any favors either. It wasn't until I watched Iron Pineapple's video covering the game that I decided to give it a shot. While I was expecting another mid-tier Souls-type title, I in fact came out of an unexpectedly exhilarating 40-hour rollercoaster of a first playthrough. I experienced anger at some of the characters' actions, euphoria after beating difficult boss battles, happiness that this game truly clicked with me, disappointment at myself for making silly mistakes, satisfaction from getting all the collectibles, fulfillment from maximizing my damage output with my favorite weapon type, amazement at some of the incredible character design, and even sadness to the point of tears at the game's dark and depressing story. It really put me through the ringer, and I love it more for it. I will preface this video now by saying that from a critique standpoint, it's going to be 95% praise with very few criticisms and nitpicks. Not because I'm sponsored or anything, but because I genuinely find it difficult to find things to criticize about this game. So if constant praise makes you cringe, or if you dislike this game, you might want to skip this one. I'm well aware that I like this game far more than the average Souls enjoyer. Also, I doubt I need to warn anyone of this, but just in case, I'll be spoiling absolutely everything about the game in this video from here onwards. If you like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, or Bloodborne, I think you'll really like this game. If you like Sekiro or Nioh, I think you'll love it, and I wholeheartedly recommend you give it a shot. It also has a demo available, so you have no excuse not to try it.
In the 89th year of the Pellos Empire, the Emperor sentenced Great General Khazan and Ozma to the greatest punishment possible for crimes against the Empire. Convicted of treason, Khazan endured merciless torture, culminating in the severing of the tendons in both his arms and his exile.
So this is how a hero ends up. You really think he's a traitor? Shh. Quiet with that kind of talk.
From that opening cutscene, we find out that General Khazan and someone named Ozma were punished for crimes against the Empire by the Emperor of Pellos. It's worth mentioning right off the bat that General Khazan is already an established character in the universe created by these developers Neopol called Dungeon and Fighter. I have not and do not plan on playing Dungeon and Fighter and know nothing about this character and its ties to that game, so all of my story coverage will be based exclusively off knowledge acquired in this game. One of the very first things I picked up on was the music. The low, dark strings immediately pulled me into the mood this game was going for. We're told this man endured merciless torture, and here we are watching him hanging hopelessly in a horse-pulled cart in the middle of the night in the middle of nowhere. There's no happiness to be had here. A mysterious voice seems to desire Khazan's physical form, and we see what seems to be this voice cause a small avalanche in order to destroy the cart and possess him, which he does successfully. Whatever it is, it's pretty powerful, and despite Khazan's arm tendons being severed, he's able to move them around like normal. Covered in blood and utterly exhausted, we make our way down the path. The voice tells us that he likes Khazan's physical form, and tells him to surrender it to him, because they need it for their mission. We collapse from exhaustion, coughing blood. We're really not looking too hot. The voice directs us to a nearby Blade Nexus in order to recover our strength. The Blade Nexus is our Sight of Grace Lantern Meditation Spot Shrine Stargazer bonfire, and we'll be using these quite a lot to do various things. For now though, we use it to regain our strength and continue onwards, after picking up our very first weapon, the Dual Wield, one of 3 weapon types, or 4 if you include bare fists. I'll briefly mention the graphics here, and I think this game is absolutely gorgeous in most places. The unique contrast of the cel-shaded characters but normally rendered environment is honestly really nice, and I'm not normally a huge fan of cel-shaded stuff. I think this game is the perfect example of artistic style being superior to fancy graphics. Moving on, we get our tutorials for locking on, blocking, and brink guarding. Locking on is very self-explanatory, I won't bore you with any of that. Guarding is simple as well, it's just blocking. You can move while blocking, but you're slower, and stamina recovery is slowed tremendously. Mercifully, guarding attacks always gives you absolute immunity to physical damage as long as you have stamina remaining. You'll still take elemental damage though, so think of it as a 100% physically resistant shield in Dark Souls. Taking a hit that empties your stamina while guarding results in exhaustion, where Khazan will be unable to move for the duration of his stamina bar recovery. Control is regained when either the stamina bar has recovered or Khazan takes another hit. Brink Guard is similar to deflecting in Sekiro and parrying in Lies of P. It's not actually a parry though, and nor is it a deflect in 99% of scenarios. A Brink Guard will use hardly no stamina and will never trigger exhaustion as long as you land them. All enemies have their own stamina or fortitude bar, and using Brink Guards will diminish whatever bar they have. It doesn't allow you to counterattack in almost every scenario, but Brink Guards are extremely powerful and allow you to keep up the flow of combat. We're now taught about dodging, which is the other equally viable way of not taking damage from attacks. Simple mechanic as well, Khazan does a dash and becomes invulnerable for that period of time. However, there is also a brink dodge mechanic, which happens when you dodge at the last few frames before an attack hits you. This will make a shadow of Khazan appear where he was before you dodged, and enhance the follow-up attack you do if it's right after the dodge. A little further on, we meet our first large enemy, a Granite Jocko, who immediately does a run-at-you attack and scares me a little bit. Oh shit! Ah! Ow! I don't know how to parry riposte yet. Fucking got him. After this, we get our next tutorial, Brutal Attacks, one of the most satisfying and rewarding mechanics these kinds of games have to offer. These act as sneak attacks and ripostes when the enemy's stamina or fortitude bar is fully depleted. The lore item we collected earlier is an escort order for the soldiers transporting Khazan, portioning them of avalanches in the area and ensuring that under no circumstances is anybody to aid Khazan medically, while also acknowledging his strength despite the lack of tendons in his arms. At the beginning of main missions, we're introduced to the area via large text and a stinger drum. Admittedly, despite really liking the graphics of this game, half of these vistas are pretty not exciting, even when they're supposed to be the key focus of that moment. Hindmark, however, is a beautiful mountainous environment with a strange moon and mist all around. Very dark here. Lacrima are our Echoes Runes Geos, Ecors, Amrita souls, and we can use them for various exchanges throughout the game. The voice tells us that collecting these stems of Lacrima will allow Khazan to hear the memories of the dead, and will often play back some dialogue of a memory to aid the current story moment. This is one of 2 ways of collecting Lacrima, the other being, now, lower your hand if you're surprised, killing enemies. Speaking of enemies, we enter a cave encampment and come across this absolute beefcake, take him down with ease, murder these soldiers who are likely writhing in pain, and find a note written by a soldier. We learn that not everybody believes Khazan is guilty of the crimes he's accused of, and that Ozma is his best friend, who as punishment has had his eyes gouged out. We also learn about one Berserk Dragon that they both killed to save the Empire. Strange now that after doing such a good deed, that they're now being punished in the most horrific ways. Something seems unjust here. Finally, before leaving the cave, I found my first energy-emitting ore rock. Not sure what this is, or whether what I just did is good or bad yet, so I continue. I'm bang on 30 minutes into my first playthrough now, and here's where I take my first death. What do you think killed me? An onslaught of arrows? An ambush? A giant animal? No. Someone stepped on a Lego. Yeah, that's about the noise that I make. That's my first death. It's oddly poetic, you know? When you die, all Lacrima is lost, but can be retrieved by simply touching the orb where you died. If you die again before collecting them, they're gone forever. Sounds familiar, right? Before I go, I collect my Lacrima and have a lovely encounter with a couple of monkeys. Monkey! Oh, shit. Another note later on, named Notes on Yetis, documents a Bantu clan in the mountains that speak of a massive Yeti that has killed 9 of their warriors. Definitely not foreshadowing. Soon after, I find a cave with a giant wild bear inside that gives me my first enemy-induced death. Their attacks were uncharacteristically delayed compared to the other enemies I'd fought till this point, but it painted a nice picture of what's to come. Yetuga is the first boss in the First Berserker Khazan, and he's pretty decent. Understandably, the game doesn't want to overwhelm the player with the first major boss fight, and as a result, the Yeti is basic as far as this game's bosses are concerned. He shares many of the same moves as the Granite Jokos encountered numerous times throughout Hindmark, most notably these standard spinny arm swing combos, so you may be pretty used to them at this point. He does, however, have a lot of new attacks as well, and he adds unexpected extra hits on the aforementioned Granite Joko attacks. He also has a very obvious grab attack that teaches the player about the audio cue before them, which most bosses and some big enemies have. The bear encountered in the cave earlier has one as well, but that encounter is optional, so this is possibly the player's first exposure to one. He also has what I believe is the first instance of elemental damage in the game. That element is Frost. Surprising, I know. 2 of his attacks cause this build-up, one being this slow earth-throwing attack where he slowly grabs a huge boulder from the ground before crashing down on you. The other is this ice breath attack that is very dangerous if you get hit by it. However, if you can recognize it quick enough, you can get behind Yetuga and have a solid 3 to 4 seconds of time to deal damage to him, a super rewarding opportunity as a prize for recognizing this attack. Yetuga's music is very percussion heavy. It starts off with a very heroic melody complementing Khazan's journey to regain his strength. It sounds pretty desperate but hopeful before coming back to reality with a heavy downward inflection in drums. A pretty good impression for the soundtrack. Still exhausted, Khazan moves onward through the mountain but collapses in the snow. An unnamed gentleman and a woman named Quimuk comes along, curious about who Khazan is, before we're abruptly put into this very curiously placed select difficulty screen. I chose normal because the challenge is why I enjoy these games in the first place, but I like that it is more accessible for players who might enjoy the gameplay, but not necessarily how difficult the game is. Now I'm going to go on a small tangent here, but I just want to hold a hand out to all the people who find games like these challenging and use game mechanics to help them out, like summons or difficulty options. Don't listen to gatekeepers. Don't listen to the people that tell you you're playing the game wrong just because you're indulging in the mechanics provided to you. No, you do not in fact have to play the game at level 1 blindfolded without parrying or dodging to play the game correctly. If anything, that's more insulting to the developers as you are deliberately ignoring game mechanics that they spent the time programming and polishing so that they can be used in the game. Play the game how you want, with your only focus being having fun. Nobody actually cares that you apparently beat the game blindfolded with your monitor turned off at level 1 without getting hit. Anyway, here's me beating Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Dark Souls 2, and Skyrim without taking any damage. Cool, right?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Easy mode will increase Khazan's damage, resistances, weight limit, and he'll deal more damage with higher stamina recovery. A good balance, I think, and one many players will be happy with. I've never actually played on this difficulty, so I can't speak about the percentages or anything, but I did play around a bit with it in the third boss, and it seems pretty significant. If you change your mind about the difficulty, though, you can change it at any point in the menu. Just keep in mind, you can't change it back. The people who rescued Khazan are members of the Bansu clan, and they remain close by him when he wakes up. She tells us that she knows about the ghost haunting Khazan, and knows a way to conquer it. To do this, Khazan must undergo the trials of the Snow Mountain, and warns him that the ghost possessing him is strong, and will be dangerous if he's to be purged. There are 3 trials of the Bansu gods, and Khazan must get their blessings, then travel to the mountain's apex. The objective of all the trials is the same.
We kill them all.
Moving on a bit, we get access to the Javelin, a powerful ranged weapon that can be used either to destroy energy-emitting ores that may be out of reach, or to take out enemies from afar. I probably should have used these more throughout my playthrough, as they are actually extremely powerful. They even have their own branches in the skill tree, but I didn't upgrade them a single time, and felt they were still perfectly strong enough throughout the entire game. They take spirit to use, and this is likely your only use for this gauge right now. We kick down a tree for a shortcut back to the Blade Nexus, and this is where the game starts introducing the other 2 weapon types. As mentioned earlier, there are only 3 weapon types here, which is disappointing when compared to games like Elden Ring or Nioh, where weapons range from daggers, halberds, kusarigama, and odachi, and you have a lot more selection. On the bright side, all 3 weapon types have an extremely refined skill tree associated with them, with very few skills being superfluous. First up is the Greatsword, my personal least favorite weapon type. I know, I've watched Ongbal, I know the Greatsword is an excellent weapon, but personally, I think it feels weird. It's very slow, as expected, but it's an unwelcome juxtaposition to this game's fast-paced combat for me. Immediately upon acquiring the Greatsword, zombies start coming out of the ground, and Plague, arguably the most common status condition in this game, is introduced. It's not too bad though, it's basically a form of poison that will drain your health over time if it procs. After passing the first trial, another large bear is encountered, and we learn the counter-attack mechanic. This one is a bit strange to me. The purpose is to deflect burst attacks at enemies, signified by a red symbol before their attacks. This part I love. It's very rewarding to land these counterattacks with a satisfying ting sound, your stamina being fully restored and the enemy becoming vulnerable to staggers for as long as you can keep them stun locked. This applies to bosses as well and gives you a well-deserved moment of reprieve. I thought that counterattacks were just a way to simultaneously brink guard and counter, but I quickly realized that it's only really used for the burst attack counters. I spent a bit of time experimenting with it and concluded that half my stamina being chewed for a counterattack as opposed to a fraction of it just for a brink guard and attacking afterwards is not worth it for any attack that isn't a burst attack. A little further up is the second trial and the Spear. Oh, the Spear, my beloved. My favorite and the fastest weapon type in this game. Right off the bat, I could tell this was going to be my favorite. Its speed and simplicity complemented my playstyle a lot, and taking a quick look at the skill tree only confirmed this. Further up the mountain was the final trial, where you fight a shadow of Khazan using the jewel wheels. This was surprisingly difficult, and I died here the first time. I also realized that I walked straight past the shortcut ladder and had to walk all the way back around to here, which is a good few minutes worth of time. With all the 3 trials cleared, we find a note near the entrance of a cave at the mountain's apex. The note speaks of a ghost radiating darkness and leaving traces of blood red. Definitely not the mysterious voice that we've been hearing this whole time. By passing the 3 trials, the Bansu gods are pleased with Khazan and task him with braving the storm they conjure at the top of the mountain. After doing so, we get a pretty trippy cutscene introducing us to Blade Phantom, the physical form of the voice we've been hearing. To combat Khazan trying to rid Phantom of his body, we're challenged to fight him, and the second boss commences. Normally, particularly in FromSoft games, I'm not a massive fan of NPC fights, so my initial thoughts were that of disappointment, really. Fortunately, Blade Phantom is a humanoid fight, but it's not really like an NPC fight, like the ghost version of Khazan we had earlier. He has his own moveset that no other character shares, except one, which we'll be covering shortly. The fight starts how you'd expect. Phantom has many punches and kicks to throw your way, each one being telegraphed and empowered by that red aura we've become so familiar with. To spice things up, he can teleport around as well, but at speeds that aren't overwhelming yet, just enough to keep you on your toes. I like this a lot, and while it's objectively easier than teleporting bosses around like Radagon of the Golden Order or the Cemetery Shades from Elden Ring, I find it a lot less frustrating and overwhelming than those fights. Teleporting here feels a lot more deliberate. The camera will cleverly follow the direction he goes. He'll never teleport anywhere outside of your peripheral, and never follows up immediately when he comes into view, always giving you time to adjust and react. Phantom has 4 weapons that he can conjure and switch between. The easiest to deal with is the giant hammer. He'll slowly lift it in the air and smash it down in front of him, or turn around before doing so, if you're behind him. A very high-risk, high-reward attack that has a big punishment window afterwards, particularly if you dodge through it and get the enhanced dodge attack as well. Quite scary is his spear. It's quite a bit faster than the hammer and feels a bit more random, but also provides a nice window for damage if you can land a brink guard on it. He also has claws, which were pretty tough to deal with at first, but are actually quite easy to adjust to, as the 2 combos he uses with these have similar brink guard timings. Most intimidating are his 2 swords though, which he'll always whip out after giving you a taste of his own brink guard. He'll unleash a 6-hit combo with these puppies unless you go really far out of the way, in which case he'll cancel the remaining hits and won't bother hitting the air. Phantom has 2 phases as well, and the second phase initiates upon him reaching 50% health. In this cutscene, we hear a flashback of Emperor Palmeria sentencing Khazan to death for endangering all of Pellos. Hearing this, and what I presume is Khazan realizing that he clearly needs the strength of Phantom to use his body, he musters his strength to push Phantom away and continue the battle. Phase 2 is much the same as the first, except he gets a few extensions to some combos that he had, and can now conjure up a 5th weapon. It's even more intimidating than the dual swords. He has a great sword of his own, and this thing is difficult to deal with. Deceiving timings and high damage mixed with mid-combo teleports, yeah, it's a tricky one. The music really went for the horror vibe on this one. Phase 1 reminds me a lot of more of a chaotic version of Mikolash, Host of the Nightmare from Bloodborne, with creepy pianos and low male choir setting the dark tone. Phase 2 keeps a similar tone, but adds more layers to the choir and some electric guitar in there as well. While we're not certain of Khazan's motivations yet, we can assume he wants to get revenge on the Emperor for falsely accusing him and Ozma of their crimes, and for the merciless torture he put them both through. And he knows that he needs Phantom's strength, so they form an alliance. Charon, the gatekeeper of the Netherworld, has tasked Phantom to restore order to the Netherworld, as it is currently being disrupted by the mortal world. In order to fulfill this task, he needs a strong and capable body, Khazan. We'll learn more about his mission in just a moment. Welcome to the Crevice, a word I use to describe my ass, a realm between the one of the living and the netherworld. This is our Roundtable Hold Nexus Hunter's Dream Mantis Firelink Shrine, and it's where we talk to most NPCs and merchants, access our storage, and pick our mission. We can do more here, but it's pretty barren at the moment. As we progress, more characters will come back here and more features will be unlocked. For now, there's only Blade Phantom, our storage chest, and an old woman named Oksana. She is an alchemist who is hanging around the crevice to help out adventurers like Khazan. Asking for her help, she tells us that we can bring her items and she will extract Lacrima from them. As you'll see, you can acquire quite a lot of gear in this game, 95% of it being stuff you'll probably never use, so getting all the Lacrima you can get, especially early on when Lacrima isn't as easy to come by, is quite helpful. I quickly take a look around the crevice before talking to Blade Phantom, but I find that there's not too much to see. I already assumed the place would fill up a bit more as we progressed, but I had a look around anyway. This place really looks like a mission out of Doom. I talk to Blade Phantom now and get a bit more information on their mission. The River of Fate in the Netherworld is drying up, which means the balance of life and death is out of harmony. The cause of this disruption is theorized to be in a forgotten temple in Hindmark, and we're tasked to head over there now. But before we do, we have access to our first bonus mission called Stormpass's Phantom of Combat. Asking Phantom about it, we learn that he is in fact an amalgamation of several strong spirits, and the more he absorbs, the stronger he becomes. Phantom isn't the only one of his kind, however, and we're tasked to go back to the apex of Hindmark to attempt to awaken another of his kind, so they can join together and become stronger. On the map, the main missions have a golden icon, while the bonus missions, that usually take place in the same environment with a few changes here and there, display a white icon. Back at the apex of Hindmark, I prepare to fight the new spirits. Unbeknownst to me, this was going to be the absolute shortest mission in the game. Huimuk is here, and we have a short chat with her before entering the fog. She has some more information about Phantom, confirming that he loves battle, and that his strength increases for every pact formed, and we're about to awaken another spirit, with the goal of defeating them and forming a pact with them. Through the fog is Keshta the Unyielding, essentially a refight of Blade Phantom with a couple of changes. There's honestly not much to talk about here, and I was left a bit disappointed that the game would recycle two bosses back to back. I don't have an issue with recycling bosses to an extent, but it was a bit jarring having essentially the same fight back to back. Now we're done with what is, in my opinion, the weakest part of Khazan. As much as I like Hindmark, in hindsight, I don't think it's a particularly strong introduction compared to what the game has to offer later. Really enjoyed it on my first playthrough, but I do think my mid-expectations of the game elevated it a bit more at the time. Defeating Keshta unlocks Phantom abilities. These are permanent passive upgrades that level up as you kill enemies. Keshta here is, in my opinion, the only one that's really helpful, as when fully upgraded, it will increase your stamina recovery by a massive 30%. Here's a rundown of all the other Phantoms we can unlock and what they do. Veronica the Advocate focuses on the Spirits of Advocacy, which are summonable allies throughout the game that we'll cover in a little bit. She boosts their damage for every time she's leveled up. Maximilian the Impenetrable increases Khazan's defenses and allows him to deal more stamina damage to enemies. Conrad the Swift reduces the stamina cost of dodging. Adelheid the Philanthropic increases how much health you recover with Netherworld energy. Wulfric the Resilient increases how much damage you deal when hitting an enemy from the front. Atlante the Precise increases the damage dealt by thrown javelins. And finally, Constantine the Devoted increases how much Phantom Form is gained from every hit. Phantom Form is something we'll cover later as well. In addition to the buffs I just mentioned, each Phantom can also be awakened twice by the use of a special item, each time unlocking a new buff. The caveat to all these being passive and permanent is that you can only have one of them equipped at a time. I valued stamina recovery a lot, so I actually stuck with Keshta the whole game, but there are definitely others that could be useful depending on your playstyle. Here we go, the Forgotten Temple, one of the best levels in the game, with one of the best bosses in the game to finish. Right off the bat, we're introduced to what the game refers to as undead. There are also zombies in the game that are actually called zombies, though these guys are just skeletons, and once you kill them, you gotta hit them one more time for good measure, or else they'll revive themselves. There is a way to bypass this later with an item, but we'll get there when we get there. We're not outside for very long before we reach the temple. There's a note at the entrance left behind by a grave robber, mentioning that Dragonkin have overrun the temple, and they were hoping that because of that, they'd find something useful. Instead, however, their entire vanguard was wiped out by them, and someone named Digor is unaccounted for. Entering the temple, we meet our first Dragonkin enemies. These guys are pretty common, and we'll be fighting them quite often. Small dudes with the swords are pretty standard and hit you with a combo of 2, 3, or 4 hits. These slightly bigger guys are quite annoying, using their wings as a shield for some attacks and hitting really rapidly. You have these even bigger ones shortly after, and these are pretty fun to fight with a lot of different combos to keep you on your toes. They have a pretty misleading brutal attack that can sometimes get you even if you time it right, but other than that, the Dragonkin are fair and really fun to fight. And they're not very observant either, so you often have opportunities to get sneak attacks. The Dragonkin are preying to this disgusting abomination. We find a note very shortly after that suggests they're trying to resurrect Hismar, the Berserk Dragon that Khazan and Ozma killed many years ago for the good of the Empire. Hismar's remains are being transported somewhere, but the necromantic rituals the Dragonkin are performing here have some pretty dark implications. This is Digor, a bard and merchant that appears in several locations throughout the game, and also the man mentioned in the Grey Robber's note from earlier. Sells some pretty standard items like temporary buffs and explosive throwables, nothing too special. Speaking to him has him reveal some of his story in poem. He doesn't really tell us much here, though, only that he came here to ask a question for one of the foes here, but found them to be dead on arrival, and that he heard the Dragonkin mentioning Hismar, the Berserk Dragon. Another thing I love about Khazan is the sound design. Absolutely everything in this game sounds incredible. Every attack has so much power and oomph behind them, and even unlocking doors or activating elevators has this really satisfying crunch effect.
You'll be with your brother soon enough. Pray that Pavel gives you a quick death.
Proceeding to the area beneath the Forgotten Temple, we encounter Defrona, much to Blade Phantom's indignation. There's clearly a bit of animosity between these two, with Phantom calling her Charon's loyal little lapdog, and accusing her of being sent to spy on them. She's not here to spy on us though, she is here at Charon's behest. See this giant circling machine here? That's the source of the Netherworld energy leaking into the mortal world. Pretty cool, right? Defrona also gives us access to Soulstone upgrades. The Soulstones, which are the energy-emitting rocks we've been destroying on our way here, contain souls of the dead, and upon destroying the stone, the soul is set free back to the Netherworld. Defrona will reward us for every few that we destroy with quite a significant upgrade in percentage to either our Lacrima acquisition or health recovery per use of the Netherworld energy. She also gives a permanent upgrade to maximum spirit, represented by the yellow diamonds above Khazan's health, and the requirement for various abilities. If you do not yet have enough soul stones to upgrade when you talk to her, or you upgrade until you no longer have any more, she says,
"You require more soul stones to unlock more effect. You require more soul stones to unlock more You require more soul stones
every single time. Ahead is our first elite enemy. These guys are bigger and badder versions of the regular enemies throughout the game, with much more health and are much more difficult to guard break. Upon defeating them, you get a bunch of gear, and they'll never respawn. Elite enemies always have glowing white eyes that give you this cool vignette effect on the screen when you're nearby. I'm not very good at puzzles, which is why I was relieved when this temple miraculously has the only 2 puzzles in the entire game, and they are so easy. So laughably easy that I question their purpose. All you have to do is turn the statues marked with white scratch marks underneath them so that they face the same direction as the ones around it. Most of these statues actually require you to interact with them 3 times, so you have to interact with it, wait for Khazan to push it, unsheath his weapons again, then sheath them again to interact with the statue. Yeah, this is the level of nitpicking I'm falling to. Not only do I not understand their purpose, but they're also just a bit tedious. My only theory is that these are here to stop you from running past the enemies, but even then, I'm really not sure. We press 3 levers and stop the machine, which unlocks an elevator and allows us to open the massive door from much earlier in the level. Behind here is the boss fight of this level, and it is a good one. This is Viper, and he's one of the best bosses in the game. A difficult, long, 2-phase fight this early in the game kind of shocked me. and he was certainly the first big challenge of the game, taking me almost 40 minutes to beat him the first time. One of the most important things to nail with Souls-type games is smooth animations. It's the reason games like Lies of P and Nioh are considered some of the better ones outside of From Software's games. Phase 1 has him using a spear against you, both in the traditional way by poking, but mainly by swinging and spinning it around him. Despite how much praise I have for this fight, I actually struggle to find much to talk about. The fight honestly speaks for itself. Everything is so well animated that it makes the flow of the battle almost flawless. I suppose the only exception I have to this is this spinny attack he can do. It can be difficult to tell which part of this animation is actually him attacking and which part is him just showing off, but other than that, Phase 1 Viper is a fantastic fight. Surprisingly, he actually has a Phase 2 as well. I wasn't really expecting this on my first run through, so I was both impressed and surprised at this. The presentation of everything is brilliant throughout both phases, and the transformation cutscene where he turns into Viper the Grafted is pure chaos. Phase 2 has him ditch the spear in favor of a sword, and he attacks you with both that and his new giant arm. He's a lot more agile in this phase, jumping around a lot while also acting in a frenzy, often pretty mindlessly swinging the sword around. He can make the entire arena go dark and leap at you a few times, the attack being telegraphed by a lightning strike before he launches himself. During this sequence, the music gets completely cut off, and it does require you to nail the timings or you will get hit for a lot of damage. Speaking of music, it's amazing. An epic orchestral piece with heavy focus on percussions again. The vocals really take main focus on this one though. I like to think of the more heroic parts of this track, like the part I'm about to play, symbolizing Khazan once again conquering the power of Hismar, as that is what Viper has used to become his new form. I'm not surprised that Viper seems to be most people's first big wall in this game, the first boss that really pushes them to their limits, because it is a difficult fight, and with how long the fight can be, pretty tiring as well. He's definitely in my top 3 bosses though. He's super fun to fight and always a decent challenge, which I enjoy. Upon his defeat, we see a cutscene detailing Khazan and Ozma's battle with Hismar, and Khazan swearing his revenge on Emperor Palmeria and Pavel, one of the nobles that falsely accused him and Ozma of crimes against the Emperor. We also unlock the Realm of the Living inside the Crevice, where all of our friendly NPCs will come for chatter and bartering. The next mission is called First Act of Revenge, and it takes us to the village of Frau to find Pavel. It starts off fighting animals again, a couple of bears, piggies, and worms, but upon entering the village, we find it has been overtaken by Dragonkin. Family is running away from a Dragonkin archer. Unfortunately, the father takes an arrow to the back, but Khazan arrives on time to rescue the child and the mother. Further up, we have the first instance of interactable environmental hazards. With the javelin, you're able to interact with some objects that can kill enemies. I'll be honest, I do like this. However, other than exploding barrels later in the game, I couldn't find any other examples of this in the entire game. This is definitely my fault. I didn't look very hard on any of my playthroughs, and in fact, if you guys have other examples of other interactions like this, I'd love to know. You can also break open the doors to a few of these houses, which is something I found other instances of, with breakable walls appearing later on as well. I found a notebook in Frau. It is a folklorist's log detailing their 7th day of observing a creature called Volbino. The children of Frau have a pet name for it, calling it Volby, and they've been seen playing with it in the valleys as it appears to be gentle and friendly. 3 days after that observation, Volbino disappears from the area. Based on the concern by the villagers, Volbino is clearly loved and valued here. 11 days after disappearing, the folklorists catch another glimpse of it in one of the valleys. Its body was withered and eyes were wild with madness. Something has definitely corrupted it. In this very short folklorist's log, we establish a story of this creature. The folklorist mentioned originally feeling like they were standing in front of a god, a transcendent being, and the villagers and children loved having them around due to its friendly and tender nature. But now it is mad, and something has overtaken it. What has overtaken it? We don't have to wait very long to find out. Entering the boss building, we see a pink-haired woman helping some villagers escape some sort of large goat creature, defending from its swings with a large shield. Khazan comes crashing in, and the battle is initiated. Unsurprisingly, this is Volbino. Its characteristics certainly match those of what the folklorist listed. It swings at you with a hammer and a nail, alternating attacks between the two. This fight is mechanically quite impressive, so bear with me while I try and break it down a little bit. Volbino essentially has two separate phases, with both phases sharing mostly the same attacks. Every once in a while, he will lick the nail and buff it with fire, which increases his move selection slightly and taught me one very important lesson, which I'll get to in 1 second. There are many attacks where he pushes the nail into the ground and slams down on it for either a simple area of effect that can be easily dodged, or if the nail is buffed with fire, will create a large circle of fire around him, which lingers for a very long time and will deal a lot of damage if you stand in it. So what was the lesson I learned? Well, Brink guards don't completely nullify damage if enemies attack with a status effect. I got some pretty good muscle memory on this fight fairly quickly, but when that nail was buffed with fire, I learned that you really have to dodge the fire attacks instead of Brink guarding. Occasionally, he will do a massive area of effect slam, which will fill the entire floor with fire that doesn't disappear for a long time. I could not figure out how to avoid this for half an hour until I finally discovered that you can climb this ladder in the arena. This is probably my only complaint about this fight. I know full well that if I just paid more attention to my surroundings, I'd have seen the ladder earlier, but forgive me for focusing on the boss a bit too much to notice it. One of the most impressive things about this fight is that if you stun him while the nail is not in his hands, it won't magically reappear into his hand. It will remain in the ground, and Volbino will gain an exclusive moveset for this situation. He'll eventually go back and get it, though. I don't know, it's a small thing, but I find that attention to detail pretty impressive. The score for this fight is the first instance of Khazan's heavy guitar tracks. It's once again quite percussion heavy, which is characteristic of Volbino's forceful ground slams, but has a beautiful mix of guitar riffs and some darker vocals in there as well. Upon Volbino's defeat, we speak with the pink-haired woman we saw helping the villagers. Her name is Elamane, and she thanks him for saving her life. She clocks on that she's talking to General Khazan, and immediately tells him that Pavel is at a place called Polemian Castle, but to get there, we have to go somewhere called Scoffer Cave, a dangerous place that she offers to guide him to. I never really touched on this before, but I like Khazan's character. He doesn't speak much, so little that I'm not even sure I have the right to like him, but I do. In fact, Ben Starr, the voice actor for Khazan, summarizes how I feel perfectly.
Khazan is a really dynamic character. He's being pulled in so many directions. He is a general, he is a friend, he is many, many other things to many people who we will see across this game. And it's about what that responsibility means to him. And certainly the most interesting dynamic for me is his relationship with the Blade Phantom. And it's such an interesting dynamic that plays out through gameplay, but also through story. And to see that, I don't want to call it love-hate, but maybe it is. It's a love-hate relationship and the intensity of what happens when those two things collide. And they need each other.
Not everybody believes Emperor Palmeria and Pavel's accusations. The great General Khazan is still respected by many people, and he does care deeply about the people of the Empire. Here, Elamane calls him a hero, and Khazan shuts it down by saying that he perhaps was a hero once, but not anymore, which makes me feel really bad for him. He's not on a high horse, he doesn't think himself better than somebody like Elamane just because he slayed the Berserk Dragon. He's a down-to-earth general that respects and cares for the people of the Empire. This is Danjin. He likes jars. And in this level, jar enthusiasts, we have to find 6 of them. These little guys are scattered around almost every single mission in the game, including ones previously completed, and can be collected to increase the wares that Danjin sells. Humorously, these jars like to hide in other jars, and they aren't that difficult to find. There are both audio and visual cues to help find them. they create this cute jingly sound when they're nearby. This sound makes me think they're in there having the time of their life, and we're ruining their fun by breaking their jar open and sending them back to dungeon. They also glow with some green particles from whatever jar they're hiding in. The combination of these two cues make them fairly easy to find, and I think this is completely fine, and sometimes it can be pretty fun figuring out where they are when you can hear one of the cute buggers, but can't actually see them. Every time you collect one and send it back to dungeon, they'll give you a quick snippet of lore about the current area, or simply an observation of the area nearby. I didn't pay too much attention to these, I admit, but I do think it's pretty cute that they do that. Dungeon then becomes a merchant for the rest of the game and will travel back to the Crevice. For coins, he sells a couple of different lanterns which provide small bonuses on top of just lighting around Khazan's immediate area. The two most useful, in my opinion, are the ones that automatically reveal the shadow undead enemies that appear from time to time, and the one that stops undead from reviving. There are a couple of others, like one that helps you locate chests and illusory walls. The amount of jars collected have no influence on the items that he sells for coins, but at intervals of collected jars, his stock of jar helmets will increase. These jar helmets are extremely good and very goofy. They didn't have Transmog until New Game Plus when I played the game, so if I ever wanted to wear one of these, I'd have to wear a jar on my head. From my hours of fashion souls, I can tell you now, it was not worth it. However, halfway through writing this script, they allow Transmog on New Game as well, after the completion of a quest later on.
This place, it's filled with bitterness. These souls belong in another world. They must be severed.
Next was another short mission set in Bangau, a small village near Frau, and the same location as Jar Enthusiasts, just at night this time. The perfect place to make use of the extra lanterns that Danjin sells, and I made fully sure to do just that. We do find an upsetting note shortly before the boss battle. Inside one of the homes is a young boy's burned diary. The implications certainly are not very happy. This boy was playing hide-and-seek with his mother, who never returned, presumably killed by Volbino, unbeknownst to the boy, who then seeks out Volbino himself, where his home was then burned in Volbino's madness. The boss fight is a remix of Volbino called the Spectre of Bangal. It's much of the same fight, but teleports between attacks are introduced into the mix. Fighting this guy so close to Volbino, I still had all of my muscle memory and absolutely destroyed him on my first try. Defeating the Spectre of Bangal reveals that the boy had actually transformed into it, or his soul was consumed by it, I'm not quite sure. The Frona appears and tells us a bit about the situation. According to her, the will of the living can sometimes be so strong, it defies the laws of the Netherworld. The boy and Volbino shared such a strong bond and linked emotions that they became one.
Sometimes, the will of the living can be so strong that it even defies the laws of the Netherworld. United by their strong emotions, the souls of Volbino and the boy became one. And now, their souls will be together forever, just as they wished.
And so that ends the tragedy of Frau. When you think of the best levels in From Software's games, you no doubt think of places like Valley of Defilement and Barren Swamp, with their super engaging and fun poisonous swamps. Or do you perhaps think of Blighttown, or the Gutters of Irithyll and their funny multi-legged inhabitants? Oh, what's that? You don't think of any of those areas? Well, isn't that a royal shame, because Scoffer Cave is a mixture of the two key elements in all of those areas. This is my least favorite area in the entire game, and despite what I just said, it's not actually because of the spiders, although these things aren't particularly pleasant to be around. It's more just the environment itself. The entire mission is honestly just quite unremarkable. There's some rocks, and some poison, and some spiders, and I'll let you guess what the boss of the level is, because it's sure as hell not an elephant. While we're on the topic, I will address my biggest criticism of the game, and a criticism shared by many others. The level design in this game is, well, it's fine, it's okay. Really nothing special. I mentioned that this level is unremarkable, and that's true, but to tell you the truth, it's true for probably 2/3 of this game's missions. There are some great ones as well, but level design is definitely something that could have been improved. The very beginning of the mission features probably the most interesting part of its entire design. Interesting, but not great. You have to climb up both sides of this giant wooden frame scaffolding looking thing. That's precarious enough as it is, but at certain intervals you have to watch out for the bats that are going to fly out and stunlock you. These bats return at a couple of points throughout the game, but this is by far the worst spot for them. Thankfully though, as long as you're blocking, you won't actually get knocked off the beam, but still. Really? Unsurprisingly, the main enemy type in this mission are spiders. Many spiders, surrounded by these green egg sacs that explode into poison and occasionally hatch into even more spiders. There are many kinds of spiders. Small ones, medium ones, large ones, extra large ones, exploding ones, and even these disgusting mother spiders that squirt out exploding 8-legged babies. About halfway into the caves, a new enemy type is introduced. These goofy goobers are called Yoma. They're little shaman gremlins that primarily use magic to attack. They're not too threatening on their own, as they don't do too much damage for the most part, but they can be pretty dangerous when grouped with other enemies. You're probably familiar with the Mimic in Dark Souls, a gaping maw with jagged teeth disguising itself as an ordinary treasure chest, with its goal being to trick you into looting it before eating you. Khazan doesn't have a Mimic enemy. It does, however, have chests that explode shortly after looting it, and rockworm enemies that will eat you if you loot the bait item. I fell for this a single time, then started to hit every item that could possibly have a worm hiding underneath it. Doing this meant I never got caught by another one. This is bait. Bait. 100% this is bait. There's a worm under here. Watch. Oh. Well, I was right. I was half right. I was half correct. Finally, before the boss, we meet the Bard again. He confirms that these spiders weren't always this monstrous, as he himself has witnessed their transformation from ordinary spiders to their current form. He reveals to us now his name, Digor, and that his family died when he was younger, but he had a loving wife that kept him going despite the challenges. But that's all he gives us right now, but he does encourage us to purchase some poison resistance items before we leave for the boss. Elamane and Khazan arrive at a large room and find somebody still alive and trapped in spiderwebs at the side of the room. Elamane attempts to rescue him and takes him to the side while Khazan fights a giant spider that comes from the ceiling of the room. And congratulations, if you guessed that the boss at the end of a cave filled with spiders is a giant spider, you'd be correct. Aratra is probably my third least favorite boss in the game. A few bosses in Khazan are extensions of mini-bosses that appear earlier. The moveset for Aratra is basically the extra large spiders encountered earlier, except now it throws venom at you, and it has a couple of counterattacks. The most interesting thing about this fight is that both front legs and the abdomen can be broken for massive chunks of damage to its health. Though I've never actually managed to break its abdomen, I have broken its legs several times, and it really helps whittle down its otherwise ginormous health bar. After breaking one of its limbs, it will eventually climb up one of the sides of the arena before emerging from the other side and regenerating whichever limbs were broken. Aratra's music is also what I would consider the weakest song in the game. I do like the underlying sense of mutation though. There's something about the somewhat out-of-tune, dissonant strings that give the sense of something's not quite right here since we're fighting a corrupted, mutated spider. That said, it's still fun to brink guard the heavy front leg slams while the percussion is thumping in the background. Aratra is the closest the game's compulsory bosses get to a lazy fight. I don't think it's egregious by any means. It's just incredibly unremarkable and doesn't even hold a torch to this game's greatest fights. Back at the Crevice, we find out the man we rescued is a blacksmith. I've been wondering since the first mission when we were going to unlock it, and I was quite surprised that it wasn't until this late into the game. I knew there definitely was one, as throughout the game we were picking up scrolls which, in their item descriptions, it says you can hand them into the blacksmith to unlock the ability to craft sets. Except we still haven't unlocked them really, as speaking to him has us find out that his family heirloom, his hammer, was lost in the cave when he was attacked by the spider. So we have to go back and get it back before we can utilize his services. Doing this involves going back to Scoffer Cave with a slightly different layout. It's significantly shorter and doesn't even have that many enemies along the way, which, to be honest, I'm thankful for. I didn't want to stay in this cave any longer than I had to. Before the boss Foggate, we find a book written by Digor the Bard named Barius the Spider's Nightmare, detailing a tragic story of two betrothed bears named Barius and Bariana. After Hismar was slain, the two bears wandered into Scoffer Cave for refuge, but Aratra and the other spiders didn't appreciate that, and they captured and devoured Bariana. Once Aratra was killed, Barius emerged from where he was hiding in the depths of the cave and exacted his revenge on the spiders, and still roams the cave with a grim, twisted satisfaction. Right around the corner, we encounter Barius, an even bigger version of the giant bear enemies we've encountered many times in the past, and upon his defeat, we meet a man named Hengi, who was hiding from Barius, and he gives us the blacksmith's heirloom. Giving this back to the blacksmith back in the Crevice now means we can craft armor, weapons, and consumables, provided we have the scroll for that set. We can also dismantle other armor and weapons that we have as well, so we can get materials from armor and weapons that we don't want to use, that we can use to craft weapon and armor that we do want to use. A simple and effective system that isn't overwhelming for me, like the one in Neo. Now we're done with Scoffer Cave, and we head to Polemian Castle, where Pavel is supposedly hiding out. Elamaine is here, and speaking to her gives us the first instance of dialogue options. From what I know, only one of these in the entire game has any influence on how the story plays out, so their inclusion is a little strange. She asks Khazan, what makes someone a hero? And you can choose between there's no such thing as a hero, or someone who protects the people they care about. I chose the latter option, and Elamaine says she will strive to be like him, protect the people she cares about. I really like Elamaine. I hope nothing bad happens to her. Polemian is in flames. What was once a grand city has now been reduced to ruin, and we must first make our way through the bandit-infested outskirts of the city to make our way inside. A note we find shortly reveals the bandits are called the Knives Vale, and Lord Pavel has put a 100,000 gold bounty per head of two brothers called Rancus and Brincus, who are identical twins and wanted for multiple accounts of robbery and murder. There's not much special about the Knives Vale enemies, most are standard melee or archers. The three exceptions are the Cowards, which will ring a nearby bell to grab the attention of all enemies in the area, although we don't encounter these until a later level. And the two bigger variations you can encounter, one with twin daggers and another with a large hammer. The large hammer ones aren't too much of an issue as they are generally quite slow, but the twin dagger guys, they can be a nuisance. Before reaching the main gate to Polemian Castle, we find two Lacrima stems that reveal two things to us. Firstly, Rancus, one of the wanted Knives Vale bandits, harbors some sort of bitterness for middle-aged men, supposedly due to a violent upbringing under an abusive father. Secondly, that Pavel has captured one of Khazan's subordinates, but strangely hasn't killed them yet. We're not sure why or what Pavel is planning yet, so we soldier on. Polemian Castle is in utter disarray, overrun by bandits. Knives Vale are everywhere in here, destroying everything inside. We find a letter written by Emperor Palmeria himself, which has not yet been destroyed, despite the written orders inside. It says to prioritize Khazan's death, but ensure to capture both him and Ozma as well. So why didn't Pavel kill Khazan when he had him captured? Despite the Emperor's direct orders, why didn't he destroy the letter? Defeating an elite Knives Vale allows us to fully explore the Citadel and descend into the depths underneath, which leads us to the underground sewers where we meet a man named Andal, who was formerly a Knives Vale member. He tells us Pavel is down here in the cellars after Rancus went berserk and started chasing them. Descending even deeper underneath Polemian has us discover a secret underground escape route. This is supposedly what Pavel is using to escape the carnage happening above ground. And entering a large metal door, we find Pavel and a man named Tristan fighting a losing battle.
Tristan! My lord, get out of here! You want to die with him too? So be it!
Stubborn old fool. What are you looking at?
Skirmish against Rankus is, I think, quite tricky. He gave me quite the beating, taking 45 minutes to kill him. What I struggled with the most was most of his standard swings of all things. For some of them, he acts like he's an Elden Ring boss, delaying the attack for centuries, while others are so quick they're very difficult to react to sometimes. His hammer has 3 different modes. The standard hammer is exactly what it sounds like, a basic, large hammer that he'll swing around with many normal combos. A flamethrower mode, which is quite a bit more tricky, especially later in the fight where he can mix it in with his standard combos and deal a lot of fire damage. The flamethrower also doubles as a rock drill, which he can use in many ways, including this funny spin-to-win attack and big earth-shattering AoEs. The third is a crossbow, which he'll use at a distance and has 3 different attacks, and the bolts fired can also be buffed with fire later in the fight. Also has a grappling hook that you can use to do one of 2 different things. Grapple to the ceiling before slamming back down with an attack that I have mistimed more times than I've eaten meals, or to grapple to the other side of the room and transform his hammer into crossbow form. I think he's a pretty good boss. My only criticism is when he turns into John Khazan and just starts walking in place. His stamina miraculously recovers so rapidly that the usual strategy of preparing for a posture break kind of just gets flushed down the toilet, all because he decided to stop attacking for 1 second. Other than that though, there's an ample opportunity to attack him, and it feels like a great back and forth fight. His score does fail to differentiate itself from the others in the game a bit though. Even Aratra's somewhat lackluster Venomous Predator track was a completely different style than everything we've heard so far, but Rankus' soundtrack is as standard as they get, but it does have some tense vocals in there, and it does suit the fight well, as my interpretation listening to it leads me to think that it is Rankus unleashing his fury in music form. After defeating Rankus, Tristan, the man defending Pavel, comes and bows in front of Khazan, to which he questions why Tristan was with the traitor in the first place. Tristan tells us that Khazan is mistaken, and Pavel only pretended to betray him in order to protect him.
At the Emperor's command, we were sent to quell the border conflict, yet found all quiet there when we arrived. As per your orders, we had with us your written commands, permitting us to withdraw and return through Vitellon. But on the way, we were ambushed by bandits, who took us by surprise and stole the written commands. It was Scalpel, who was scouting nearby, who saved us. Even though I was wounded, I knew I had to get to the Imperial Palace. But there, I was arrested for aiding you in the crimes against the Empire that they said you were guilty of. It was Pavel who saved me, Great General. He told me how all this was a plot by the Emperor. From the moment he sent us to the borders, we were to be labeled as traitors.
Emperor Palmeria was jealous of Khazan and his great name and reputation. He saw Khazan as a threat to him after Hismar was defeated. To eliminate this threat, he had to make Khazan seem like he was a traitor and a criminal, hated by all. Palmeria cleverly took advantage of Khazan's commands being stolen by the bandits to convince everybody that he and his allies were actually planning on attacking the Imperial Palace. Back at the Crevice, Oksana asks for our help to collect something called the Kaleido box that she lost in the Silent Temple when she crossed from the Netherworld. She tells us that it would be useful to us, but doesn't elaborate any further. We, of course, head back to the Silent Temple to go and get it. This is the same place that we fought Viper, but we're heading through the location in a very different order, and this time there are a lot of active traps like these spinning flamethrowers. And Neopol knew what they were doing. Placing these flamethrowers sandwiched by two archers trying to attack you, that's difficult and cruel. This is the first mission in the game that doesn't end with a traditional boss battle with a health bar at the top of the screen. Instead, the final battle of the mission is a duo fight against a Pel Loss soldier ghost and some sort of scholar mage. I'll be honest, I don't really know the significance of these two, but they seem to be protecting the relic in this room, as they claim it belongs to them as you enter the battle. You can find a magic scholar's log halfway into the mission, which does explain the relic in question, so could this be the magic scholar that wrote that log? I'm not sure, it's not confirmed. It would be remiss of me not to mention the spirits of advocacy. I can't speak very much about how useful these are, as I've only summoned them a grand total of one single time, for the footage that you're currently watching. Defeating spirits of adversity, summonable at these red glowy spots, earns you items called Lacrima of Circulation. Using these at the golden glowy spots will summon a Spirit of Advocacy that will aid you for the boss fight, very similar to how Lies of P handles its summonable help. Oksana appears and thanks us for returning the Kaleido box. Meeting her back in the Crevice has her explain exactly what it does, and I really like it. Every piece of armor and weapons you obtain in Khazan have random attributes like stamina recovery speed, or charged attack damage increase, or guard stamina damage increase. Little stats like that. It's a shame when you get an excellent weapon, but the random attributes are lackluster, or they just straight up suck. Well, the Kaleido box is the way to remedy that. By spending Lacrima, you can re-roll selected random attributes and have it be randomly replaced. Unlike Neo, there's not a ginormous pool of random attributes, and re-rolling it is pretty cheap, so it wouldn't take long to get the attributes you want. I tend to like stamina recovery speed and charge attack damage for dual wield, or stamina damage increase for spear. Those are usually pretty good. Emperor Palmeria was behind the Knives Veil, and Khazan's next mission is to make them and their leader, Maluka, pay for their actions. The next stop is Nadin Quarry, and this place is just depressing. While the locations are always pretty dark, this one is on another level. Its wooden scaffolding is completely damp from the pouring rain, the ground is muddy and slippery, and undead have overrun the area. To add insult to injury, the outskirts have spiders as well. Truly glorious. This section is quite long, but after a while you find your way out of the quarry and up an elevator into Nadin. Elamane is waiting at the top of the elevator, saying she followed us because she wanted to help. She admits that she used to be aligned with the Knives Veil, but she's not proud of it, and decides to give us some more information on them and their leader. Elamane joined the Knives Veil when they used to stand up for the helpless after the nobles abandoned or exploited them, people they were supposed to be protecting during the Dragon Wars. Heading into Nadin to hunt down Maluka, unsurprisingly the city is overrun with Knives Veil bandits, including a couple of elite versions which are a doozy to deal with. After unlocking 3 different shortcuts that all lead back to this third sword nexus, we finally unlock the way to Maluka.
It's him. He's the source of the stench.
So you finally worked it out. I'm here to make you pay for what was done to me.
Who do you think would be more famous? Great General Khazan, hero of the Empire, or the man who killed him?
Maluka is one of my favorite bosses in the game. Firstly, he looks awesome. A battle-scarred veteran of war using 2 greatswords to attack, swinging them around like they weigh as much as feathers. Or steel, because we all know that steel is heavier than feathers. His combos are all really fun to respond to. Nothing is too overwhelming, but failing to respond correctly does result in some of the hardest hitting attacks in the game so far. Despite his large weapons, Maluka is fast and can dodge to the side quickly and jump into the air to prepare some heavy hitting slams, and can even charge them up with light for an even harder hitting smackdown, but rewards you greatly if you manage to parry or dodge it. Phase 2 comes along unexpectedly quickly. At about 70% health, Maluka becomes enraged that Khazan is winning, and in his anger, uses the power of chaos that has consumed him to transform into an angry purple demon. Ignoring the pun, phase 2 is absolutely chaotic. He begins the phase by leaping into the air, slamming down and summoning a tornado around him. He then sheathes his greatswords, puts his hand on his katana, charges up a grab attack that slows the game down due to how powerful it is, then sheathes his sword, but not before attacking a single time first, jumps back, and leaps forward to unleash a 9-hit flurry before jumping back and cleansing the blood off his sword. It's a crazy cool phase opening. It's not visually overwhelming, it doesn't overload your senses, but it still demands your concentration and does give breathing room between his assaults to prepare for the next one. The reason I love Maluka's fight is because it feels extremely rewarding. Although he can block your attacks and has quite a lot of invincibility frames during his dodges, he has many attacks that involve him sheathing the sword and attacking you after it flashes. Brink guarding these allows for some easy damage, and as usual, the brilliant sound design and visual flourish makes these so incredibly satisfying. A lot of his phase 1 attacks get expanded in this phase as well, with him adding a 3rd or 4th attack onto combos to keep you on your toes. The exception is this Wind Poke combo, which turns from a 3-hit combo into this relentless combo that just never seems to end. Maluka's soundtrack is also very good. The strings in phase 1 sound a bit scattered and all over the place, which to me feels like the strings themselves are in some sort of cyclone of chaos. When the music becomes more grounded, when it escapes the cyclone, it erupts into heavy guitar riffs and percussion. Phase 2's music has completely succumbed to chaos, introducing conflicting low-pitch male vocals and high-pitch female vocals, while taking the leitmotif from the first phase and warping it into this horrifying requiem of terror. I understand there's a possibility that I'm looking too much into the music, but to me, that is the beauty of video game soundtracks and the sheer power of interpretation. I think Maluka is a pretty challenging boss and definitely the fastest paced fight we've had in the game so far, but if you can overcome the challenge and mitigate his speed by parrying correctly and punishing when necessary to bring him down to your level, it is absolutely one of the best and most skill-rewarding fights in the game. After Maluka's defeat, Blade Phantom allows Khazan to transform into a phantom of his own, and destroys Maluka so badly that his entire soul is absolutely obliterated, something that is supposed to be impossible. Khazan has formed a pact with Blade Phantom, and this allows him to use what is called a phantom form. This is similar to Neo's living weapon form, where your moveset gets completely overwritten, and you turn into this invulnerable alternate form at the click of a couple of buttons, providing you have enough charge to do so. Phantom form also has a skill tree branch, but I never really experimented much with it, so I don't know how good the form really is, but I always used it when I was in a bad spot or had multiple status effects to be rid of them and get out of jail free. I mainly use it as a window to get a bit of a breather. Elmain appears at the end of the fight, telling us again that Maluka wasn't always a monster, and that something must have changed him. He tells us he began visiting a place called El Ravaka, and it was after he started going there that he began to change. Back at the Crevice, Oksana speaks to us about the dragon scale we got when we defeated Viper. He tells us that it points towards somewhere named the Nameless Cavern where the Dragonkin reside. She's been hearing strange cries coming from there and prompts us to go and take a visit. Shortly after arriving, we come across a young, friendly Dragonkin called Xilence, who begs Khazan not to hurt him. Xilence can talk, and he grew up with humans, and as such, doesn't hate them, and thinks the Dragonkin are evil. His family is trapped inside the Silent Temple, and he asks Khazan to go and rescue them and punish one General Xaldin. We're heading through the Silent Temple again, where we first fought Viper and where we found the Kaleido box, but in complete reverse order this time. About halfway through, we find a pile of corpses, and interacting with the Lacrima strand reveals that it is in fact Xilence's friend. It's not looking good for his family. Sure enough, just before the boss fight, there's another Lacrima strand. It's Xilence's father. As he wished, we go to punish General Xaldin, who is in the next room and is a slightly different version of Viper's first phase. I enjoyed the first phase more than the second phase, so I'll gladly fight him again, but I will address the topic of reusing bosses very soon in the next chapter. After killing Xaldin, Xilence thanks us. We break the news to him that his family is dead, and he takes it as well as you would expect. He was happy to see the Dragonkin, was happy to see others like him, but not anymore. He hates them, and claims that he will stop the Dragonkin from killing any more humans. We give him Hismar's scale, as it points to where the Dragonkin reside, and we follow him to his next destination. Hismar's scale points toward the abandoned Nadin Citadel, a dark, damp place that is ideal for hiding. The great general of the Dragonkin, General Neems, is inside the abandoned Citadel, and this is the general who killed Xilence's family. It's a short journey to the end of the mission. It is snowing in Nadin, and the city is flooded. The Knives Vale are nowhere to be seen. Now only the Dragonkin roam the streets above water. Finding the boss gate, we enter, to find poor Xilence corrupted by Hismar's scale, turning into a mutated version of himself. It's Viper's second phase, with the added twist of having thick scales, which nullifies almost all damage until it's broken. So here's the thing. Reusing bosses has never bothered me. Is it objectively a lazy way to pad out the playtime and fabricate another boss fight? Probably. But subjectively, I'm very much unfazed by having to refight bosses, especially if the fight is fun. And Viper is very fun. If this does bother you, I totally understand and can see how at this point in the game, the recycled fights might be getting a bit exhausting and can have you rolling your eyes when you see them. Maybe I'm just easy to please. Arriving at El Ravaka, we find the gate shut. Pushing it open Kratos style, Blade Phantom tells us that the stench of chaos is heavy here. Elmain goes on a bit faster than Khazan when...
Elmain!
General!
We do not know where she's got taken to, but it's likely somewhere within El Ravaka, so we push forward. The first part of the level is unremarkable, just a poor fishing hamlet filled with undead, including these new ones which light their head on fire and explode after diving at you. Alone, they're not too bad to deal with because they die quickly, and even when they don't, the explosion's not too difficult to dodge away from. But unsurprisingly, these enemies can be quite dangerous when unhandled in a group. Inside one of the buildings, we find an elevator leading underground, which Blade Phantom tells us is the source of the chaos in the area. The bottom is this beautiful waterfall cave above a ravine with a statue of an unknown figure impaling a dragon. Across the ravine is a very large door and a sword nexus, but seemingly no way to cross. The absolute cruelty of these developers to add this bat enemy in a room like this. It's the most utterly precarious and cramped room imaginable, where falling pretty much anywhere results in instant death. The many dive attacks of this bat send Khazan flying and falling to his death.
Skill issue.
Making our way through the cistern of El Ravnica, we encounter my arch nemesis, Fish Moly, aka the Revenant Devourer. I didn't think it was possible to have this much hatred for a multi-eyed fish. This thing eats the little fish around it to get stronger and inflicts a status called Hallucination on you, which reverses your stick controls intermittently if it procs. There's not many of these things in the game, but god damn, I hate them so much. Exiting the cistern, we find ourselves at the other end of the ravine from earlier. And through the giant gate, we find a laboratory with a purple liquid or gas pulsing through the walls, presumably chaos. Getting deeper into the laboratory, we can hear Elamain grunting in pain, and after going through a few more doors...
Elamain!
What exactly is happening to her, we're not sure, but one thing is for sure. The machine she's hooked up to is being powered from somewhere in the laboratory, and we have to go and turn it off. Throughout the lab, we find some research documents written by one Tanya. The first note we find details her experiments that she performed on Maluka. According to the notes, the experiments were successful, and his combat capabilities were significantly enhanced. The second document claims how chaos is captivating her, and that it might allow Tanya to follow, in quote, his footsteps. Failure to do so would provoke his wrath, and that's clearly not something she wants. This explains why Maluka suddenly changed after visiting this place, and what turned him from a just and good leader into a ruthless, lawless bandit. Heading through the lab, featuring some level design that reminded me a lot of Ratchet & Clank 3, we disabled the power heading to the heart of the machine that Elamain is hooked up to. Anxiously, we head back up top to check on her. Unfortunately, we were too late. The chaos has consumed Elamain, and now we must fight. Honestly, she deserved better. Not only did she not deserve this ending to her story, but she also didn't deserve to be one of the worst bosses in the game. She spends most of the time hiding behind her impenetrable shield that charges up every time you hit it. You can then channel the power within her shield to unleash some powerful electric attacks, but those aren't really much of an issue to deal with. My main problem with this fight is that it almost never feels rewarding. Unlike Maluka, who rewarded you with some long windows of punishment for parrying correctly, Elamain sometimes just doesn't let you attack at all. You'll parry her standard 3-hit combo and she'll jump back in this visually satisfying stagger as if you've broken her resolve and she's going to allow you to attack, but that's usually not the case. She'll graciously allow you to hit her once or twice, before turtling behind her shield again and regaining all of her stamina. The fight is sad though. Khazan respected Elamain as she respected him. She had no crown, no title, only the quiet strength of someone who tried day after day to be more than the world expected of her. But chaos is cruel and cares little for the purity of hope. Without mercy, chaos consumed her, and Khazan loses yet another close friend and good soldier. The music in the fight further exacerbates the feeling of reluctant battle. The powerful female vocals represent Elamain's cause. her very unfortunate fate at the hands of this cruel force. And ends with the inevitable, unfortunate reality of what General Khazan must do.
Eleme.
Mortal, I feel your rage and despair. Why does her death matter so much?
She was a good person. All she wanted was to protect the people she cared about. I'm sorry I couldn't do the same for you, Eleme.
I choose to return to Plemion Castle now as part of the mission, Pavel's Final Words. Earlier, we discovered that Pavel did not in fact betray Khazan. He unfortunately met his demise at the hands of Rankus. To honor his final words, Khazan heads back to Plemion Castle to put an end to the Knives Vale's reign over the city. It's one of the shortest levels in the game and has us going through the bowels of the Citadel. After defeating a Knives Vale elite, we discover a bandit's orders note. It reads,
I, Rankus, have returned. Quit hiding, you yellow-bellied slouts, and get out here. It's time for another round. Head straight for Plemion Castle as soon as you see this. I'm going to rip that bastard Khazan apart for killing my brother.
Sure enough, Brinkus is waiting for us in the exact same room that we killed his brother in earlier. The two brothers must have trained using the exact same lessons because Brinkus' moveset looks oddly familiar. Defeating him gives Khazan some peace, allowing Pavel to rest easy and removing the Knives Vale's grasp on Plemion. Back at the Crevice again, Tristan has even more dire news. Julian, a soldier that fought at Khazan's side during the Hismar conquest, has been taken to a place called Linon Mine, a horrible place where prisoners are sent to mine, but they never last long. Heading to the mine, Tristan waits for us and agrees to explore from different directions. This is, of course, the game's excuse to not have to bring the characters along with you. Tristan says that Julian was likely imprisoned due to association with Khazan, and was found guilty of treason just as he was. Interestingly, Tristan asks Khazan what he will do when he comes face to face with Emperor Palmeria. It's unfortunately another cosmetic dialogue choice, as I couldn't find any difference in responses or any difference in future events. Before heading directly into Linon Mine, we have to battle our way through a little village on the outskirts that has been overrun with bandits. Near the end, we find an Imperial Post Guard's log. It reads,
They sent me out here saying there were more prisoners to watch. I was pissed at first, but honestly I'm starting to get used to it. Most of these guys I hear are Khazan's men. Ivan came in looking like he'd seen a ghost. He said the guards were feeding the prisoners to the beast. I told him to calm down and get some sleep, but he was dead serious. I've been hearing what I thought were animal sounds coming from the mines. Could he be telling the truth?
In fact, these prisoners can be found throughout the whole game. Innocent characters that wear all the same clothing and share many of the same animations. And you can kill them. There's nothing stopping Khazan going through and murdering these lifeless NPCs. No repercussions at all. From an immersion standpoint, I actually think the game would have been better off not including these whatsoever. Or at the very least, have a line of dialogue like, "Thank you, General," and Khazan says something like, "Please, go home, stay safe." Little things like that go a long way in world building, and while I think the game is generally pretty good at world building, the inclusion of these NPCs actually takes me out of the immersion a little bit. Plague is all around inside the mine. There are hundreds of these rock piles that rapidly build up plague if you stand nearby, and undead have swarmed the more scarcely visited areas of the cave. And the areas that do get visited have exploding barrels to clear up more space in the mine quicker. I'm not quite sure what they're digging up, but it's evidently the same red crystal that appears on the soul stones, which, let me tell you, gets genuinely annoying when trying to actually look for soul stones. It also allows this soul stone to be what is, in my opinion, the most well-hidden one in the entire game. I had to come back for this one in my first playthrough.
He's here. Release the beast!
Shaktuka is the beast of Linon Mine, a towering, muscular, lion-like creature with a rough and dark coat, adorned with a large spiked collar. With its large head, split jaw, and massive sharp claws, the majority of the beast's attacks involve slashing at you or biting. The biting attacks in particular often open it up for large windows of punishment, with it taking a few seconds to recover from using its entire body weight to pounce at you. I mentioned this before, but one thing that makes Souls-type games great that people underappreciate is when the enemies are so well animated and visually intuitive. FromSoft have always been very good at this, although I do think a lot of Elden Ring encounters can be a bit less visually intuitive than desired. God, I can't time that right for the life of me. Okay, then he squirts, yep, and then I get hit by the squirt. Lies of P-bosses are extremely well animated as well, and of course, so are the bosses in Khazan. For being a colossal and rabid beast, everything Shaktuka does is easy to understand, and nothing is overwhelming. His bites cause plague buildup, so sometimes you're better off dodging those, and he can even lick his paw to buff his claw attacks with it as well. There's this one particular punching attack that he can do that has a really long wind-up that I just could not get the hang of. It one-shot me as well on both playthroughs I did for this video, and I could just not figure out the timing for it. It was driving me crazy. The Bitter Truth is the name of Shaktuka's battle track. I'm not sure what the implications of that title are, but I assume the people running Linon Mine didn't really want every Tom, Dick, and Harry knowing about Shaktuka's presence. Much like Rankus's track, I think this one fails to differentiate itself from the others for the most part, but it does have some heavy percussion in there, as well as these fluttering strings near the end, similar to what Bear McCreary did for the battle against Horizon in the 2018 God of War title, which is fitting as Shaktuka is definitely the biggest foe we've faced so far. With Shaktuka's defeat, we can say hello to Yulian, who is thankfully still alive. Khazan rests his hand on Yulian's shoulder, and we learn that he came here to Linon Mine intentionally, for staying in Vitalon would have been a death wish. More importantly, we learn that he went to Ozma first to help Khazan clear his name, but he was told Ozma had already been executed. In despair due to Ozma's death and Khazan's arrest, he didn't have much hope left. But secret word came to him from someone who had seen Ozma alive. Someone who had once been his apprentice, a believable source, but also someone who strangely died after revealing this information. Yulian, wanting to uncover the truth, started asking more questions, and wanted to find out if Ozma's death was a lie. He eventually found Ozma alive, meeting in secret with Emperor Palmeria. Everything has gone according to his plan. All this pain and suffering is all thanks to Ozma.
Ozma! Why are you doing this?
The time has come.
So not even the Emperor was safe from Ozma's tyranny. Is Chaos warping his mind? What is he doing? Why is he doing this? We have to find out. While we don't know Ozma's whereabouts, we do know where Trocker, his closest mage ally, is. Before heading there though, we have a few more side missions to tackle. Tristan tells us that the Empire's 4 mages were particularly loyal to Ozma, and that a laboratory similar to El Ravika's contains many research notes left behind by them. Maybe finding these can help understand Ozma's plans? This laboratory is filled with undead, and amusingly, you can use the Ratchet & Clank laser traps to dispose of them pretty effectively. I always hate it when games make it so environmental traps kill you in 3 or 4 hits, but then enemies become essentially invulnerable to them. Thankfully, Khazan doesn't do that, and due to the enemy's generally smaller health pools, the traps are actually more dangerous to them than they are to you. Gravity, however, is just as dangerous as always. There's a very precarious tower that you have to jump down with 2 different paths to go through. One of them is the intended path, while the other leads to a treasure chest. Completed Yerid is the boss of the workshop, and it's an identical fight to the Shaktuka one. In fact, I don't think there's a single difference this time. Except maybe the plague buffs on his hand last a bit longer? I'm not sure. We discovered the source of the failed experiments roaming the laboratory. The most mad scientist looking mad scientist ever, called Aman, was trying to graft together a bunch of different creatures and give them life using chaos. But chaos changes everything it touches, and even these creatures turn on the ones who created them. This guy's also just hanging out in here. Not quite sure why, or rather his guts are hanging out of him. Back in the Crevice, Yulian asks Khazan for his assistance in getting his brother Adric and a few other soldiers out of Linon Mine. When they escaped originally, not everyone was able to make it out. Adric went back to get them, but hasn't been heard from since. This section of the mine has been abandoned for longer, and instead of undead, is swarming with spiders. Why Adric and the others are stuck in a separate, long-since abandoned quadrant of the mine, we're not sure. What we do know is that he's waiting for us at the top, guarded by Yeturak, a much more difficult version of Yetuga. He hits a lot harder, has quite a few more attacks, mixes up timings of already established ones, and has a lot more health. Adric is thankful and tells us that after Khazan rescued Yulian, the guards were threatening to execute everybody out of fury. He tried to save them, but he ultimately failed to rescue a single person. Yulian promised his men that he would rescue them, and in our final side mission before going to see Trocker, we help him fulfill that promise. And by help, I mean basically do it for him. Through the Linon Mine labor camp, there are soldiers trapped inside cages. We have to free all of them and defeat the leader of the bandits here. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Freeing the soldiers in these cages triggers a voice line from them. All of Khazan's subordinates freed during this mission will thank him for it and express some surprise that he's still alive. Remember, not many people know that Khazan is still kicking. The most, he's been arrested and brutally tortured, the tendons in his arms destroyed, so it makes sense that these soldiers are a little surprised to see him. It's such a little thing, but it really helps with world building. It's so nice to see them hit that detail here at least, but it'd be really nice to see it elsewhere as well. We also find a Lacrima strand that reveals one of Khazan's subordinates exclaiming that they knew Khazan would not betray the Empire like that, and senses some corruption from Emperor Palmeria. Yes, more of that, Neopol, more of that! Entering the large gate at the end of the labor camp plays a cutscene and introduces us to a character named Piotr, who is threatening to kill Khazan's subordinates. Now that we're here, we put an end to his tyranny, as well as that of another soldier named Sergei. In the end of it all, Yulian says the soldiers Khazan rescued are waiting for his orders. But Khazan has different plans.
We managed to save quite a few men. They're all waiting for you, sir.
They can't see me like this. Everything that defined me is gone. Seeing me like this will only dismay them.
You're the great General Khazan, sir.
No. I want you to deliver my final order. Disperse, return home, and live happily.
The Witch's Castle in Aldavir is our next destination. We're off to find Trocker, Ozma's closest mage ally. This is probably the biggest mission in the game, and the first one that has a total of 5 soulstones to collect. Before reaching Trocker's castle, we have to make our way through the Aldavir slums, and open a large gate to the inside. The very first enemy in this level is an elite Pellos spearman, and these enemies do not mess around. They're definitely one of the hardest standard enemies in the entire game, and it is a crime to appear as often as they do. You could be on Iceland, and this guy would still be able to reach you with his spear from Antarctica. The residents of Aldavir have all been infected with chaos, which introduces this, honestly, quite anxiety-inducing mechanic of turning some of the seemingly ordinary residents that you see throughout the game into enemies. There's no easy way to differentiate them until they attack you. You can cheese the system slightly by using the lock-on system, as you can't lock on to the harmless characters, but this isn't foolproof, at least for me. Even if you do get close to the harmless characters, they can sometimes get up and start running as if they're about to attack you, when in reality they're just running to the side to get away. This definitely led to me killing some innocent people. We find a waterlogged journal written by a slum dweller.
Trocker, that blasted witch, is back. It's like she's out to destroy every last one of us. She's flooded the entire village, all while going on about bringing us true salvation. We were so terrified for our lives that we begged for mercy. But she just laughed. How are we supposed to survive this? Where did it all go wrong? If we'd known it would come to this, maybe we should have done something when we had the chance.
The lower area of the slums has been completely flooded by Trocker, so the first part of the level has Khazan traversing the rooftops of buildings and defeating many Pellos soldiers. Opening the floodgates has the water escape into the valley below, and for the first and only time in the game, opens up a massive new area accessible by backtracking. This is what makes the level so long, as it can take some time to ensure you've looked everywhere. With the water gone, we can open the gate into the Witch's Castle, but not before fighting some more undead and failed experiments, including an elite version. The castle itself is actually quite a small area, and it doesn't take us long to reach Trocker. Strangely, Yoma have swarmed the castle, including its small library, which has the first instance of a hidden bookshelf in the game. In an incredibly original twist, there's a glowing, interactable book on the shelf that moves the bookshelf to the side, revealing a hidden room with a soul stone behind. Also inside the library is an undelivered letter from Lydia, Tristan's wife.
My dearest Tristan, have you prepared yourself for the battles ahead? Since you left, chaos has engulfed Aldevir Castle. Servants are dying one by one, their bodies marked with strange blood spots. They're calling it a plague, but I can't shake the feeling that there's more to it. Oh, how I wish I could lean on your wisdom to guide us through this storm. But don't worry about me. Guido has rushed to my side, and Father is also hard at work trying to sort out this whole affair. The truth should come to light before too long. There must never be a moment's rest for a general of your caliber, even with Hismar defeated. I pray this war will end soon, so that we can be together once again.
Khazan! So you survived after all, I see. That's disappointing.
Ozma, where is he?
The great General Khazan. I never understood what Ozma saw in you. Always talking you up all the time. Very annoying. Why would he need you when he already had me?
Somebody sounds a bit jealous. Rocca is a visually brilliant design. She's like a jellyfish with her big pink hat and umbrella, but also appears to be some sort of trilobite when laid out flat. Definitely a lot of deep sea creature inspiration here, and this is true as well for the fight mechanics, with many of her attacks involving summoning jellyfish or water geysers to attack. Her two most dangerous attacks include this irritating rain attack. It's not difficult to avoid at all, just requiring running to the side, but it leaves behind these circles of light in the water wherever it goes, which deals very high damage if they're stepped in. And these last a long time. I don't know how long exactly, but it has to be 40 seconds or something. They never seem to disappear. And now, the only attack in the entire game that I don't understand the intended dodge method for. Not a single time ever have I not taken a tick of damage for this attack. Rocca will fly into the air and summon 3 blue jellyfish in the arena that will substantially increase your stamina in length and recovery. Then fire a purple projectile, then a million blue ones, before finally firing another purple one and charging down at you. I've tried brink guarding everything and running around the edge of the arena in circles, running in circles in the radius of a blue jellyfish, all to no avail. The best way I found was to just dodge left to right repeatedly until the projectiles stop. It works well, but it's not a 100% consistent way to avoid all damage on this attack. Rocca's soundtrack features a lot of powerful female vocals and heavy strings this time instead of percussion, with this particular section to me feeling like we're stuck in a cyclone in this crazy whirlpool. Similarly, the piano later in the song goes absolutely crazy. Rocca was a pretty tricky fight for me because she deals frost build-up with many of her attacks, and getting affected by this decreases Khazan's movement speed, and it is quite debilitating. Until I learned how to semi-consistently deal with the jellyfish spam attack, I was dying quite often. I think she's a pretty decent fight though. She's not an overwhelming spellcaster like a certain someone we'll be meeting soon. Upon defeating Chokka, we get a cutscene showing Chokka and Ozma in cahoots. Ozma tasked Chokka to kill a dark elf who knows too much about his plans, but Chokka has been slow to the task, and the dark elf remains alive in Rephalan. We need to find this dark elf and learn more about Ozma's plans. Before heading to Rephalan, we have a few more side missions, and this one, simply named Lacrima, is the absolute worst side mission in the entire game. We're heading back to the Alderveer Central District to chase a strong source of Lacrima. Don't forget that consuming Lacrima is the way that Blade Phantom gets stronger. The Frona is here and tells Phantom he's wasting his time searching for Lacrima when Lord Charon's mission remains uncompleted. This aggravates Phantom, and the two exchange some lovely words with one another.
Leave us, lapdog.
Even Khazan questions the importance of collecting Lacrima when there are more important things to be done, but Phantom insists that it is of utmost importance. Phantom becomes so in love with consuming Lacrima that he starts... Wait, hang on. He starts singing when you collect the strands in this level.
La la la, Lacrima. La la la, Lacrima.
He does this a few times, and I guess it's supposed to be funny, but it really just comes off as cringe. It's just so blatantly uncharacteristic of Phantom to be doing this. He's been the weakest character in the game in terms of development. He doesn't understand or care about emotions, so to hear him singing when you interact with Lacrima strands, something you've probably done 100 times so far, is quite jarring.
La la la, Lacrima.
To add insult to injury, there are 7 of these failed experiment enemies in the level, and it feels like Lost Izalith all over again. Yeah, how do we make this mission difficult? Just copy and paste the same mini-boss tier enemy 7 or 8 times. That'll do. And it doesn't stop here. The mission has the absolute worst boss to finish. It's another failed experiment, but this time it's in a giant pool of plague water, and is assisted by many, many reviving undead enemies. It's all gross. Worst mission in the game. Back at the Crevice, Tristan tells us that he never got another chance to see his wife before Alderveer Castle was consumed by chaos, and needs to know what happened to her. Khazan knows Alderveer is a dangerous place to go alone, and he insists that he goes with Tristan to find out. Making our way back through Alderveer Castle, including the same library from before, we find a very intriguing old diary of mysterious origin. The diary says that another maid has been found dead while cleaning. An unexpected sight considering Guido is said to be protecting not only Lydia, but many of the maids in the castle. Surprisingly, the author of this diary found a lead, and asked a collapsed guard they found one night what happened to him. The diary ends before they reveal who has been killing him, with the diary becoming illegible and stained with blood. However, it doesn't take us a while to find out who the killer is. It's Guido, who has evidently been consumed by chaos, and is a slightly different version of Maluka's second phase, and as such, is super fun and rewarding to fight. Even more so now, knowing what he's done to the innocent maids and soldiers of Alderveer Castle. In his dying words, he says,
Lydia, my love, I'm coming to you.
Guido was my friend since I was a little girl. Then he suddenly kidnapped me and locked me away. He was desperate for my love, hoping I'd see him as more than just a friend. But I couldn't. He even took the engagement gift Tristan gave me. He couldn't stand the fact that I still loved Tristan. So he got angry and hit me. Guido killed my parents. I'm so afraid. What if he wants to kill me too?
Damn it! Guido, he killed Lydia. My poor Lydia. Guido was a monster all along, and I didn't even realize it. How could I have been so foolish? Lydia.
After that upsetting end to Tristan and Lydia's story, Khazan receives word that one of his old comrades named Valus has gone missing when searching a Chaos laboratory underneath Aldavir. Similarly to the El Ravnica laboratory when we fought Elamane, the facility is filled with various undead, Yoma, and purple lasers of death. The end of this level is one of these twisted mages, a difficult enemy with a large tail that can shoot beams of chaos, attempting to destroy a large pink vat. These vats have been sprawled throughout all of the laboratory levels and sometimes contain items, but they can also contain enemies. On my first playthrough, I killed this twisted mage before the vat was destroyed, ending the final encounter then and there. But out of curiosity, I broke it on my second playthrough, turning the boss fight into a 2 versus 1 against a twisted mage and a failed experiment. I don't know, it's small, but I thought it was a nice touch that you can end this fight basically before it starts, if you clock on to what's happening quickly enough. Retrieving Valus's axe, we discover that he was killed by a comrade named Werther, who got transformed into that twisted mage that we killed. Even simply being around chaos, it changes whatever it touches. In an effort to track down the dark elf that Trocca spoke about, Khazan travels to the Rephalan Mountains. This is definitely one of the more unique and interesting missions in the entire game. Yulian is here, and he tells us that there's a large cave nearby that the dark elf is likely located. Surely enough, we find a bloodstained scroll, which confirms that they are located within the cave here at Rephalan. We make our way across this long bridge to a portal, which transports us from this desert area to a much more fantastical landscape. Dark blue, crystal clear water and beautiful blue plants decorate this area. Feces thrown by these monkeys also decorates it very soon after. We soon arrive at this main courtyard where Blade Phantom says that he can feel 3 magical auras concealing a space here, and we must find the source of each aura. Rephalan Mountains is split into 3 different paths, with a glyph acting as the source of the magical auras at the end of each one. One path leads toward undead and these disgusting, plague-ridden trees. In this direction, though, is Digor, back again to tell us more of his story. He says that it's great to see Khazan again, and asks if he'd like to hear the next part of his tale. Digor tells us now that a disgusting nobleman wanted Digor's wife in his life, and this nobleman started plotting nefariously, with a gleeful smile all the while. Frustratingly, this is all he tells us, but worry not, we will be finding Digor again later, so we can finally unravel his entire story. The end of this path holds the Abyssal Bridge, a horrible place where you can fall through the floor in the blink of an eye. Thankfully, the grid squares stay broken, but it really didn't feel great falling to your death without much of a visual cue at all. At the end of the Abyssal Bridge is a big skeleton using a rapier. We've faced these enemies many times before, so they're not too much of an issue. This marks 1 of 3 down. Second path brings us to a fetid, gross swamp filled with our good spider friends. This path isn't too long, it's the shortest of the bunch, and ends with an area called Poisoned Waters, which is exactly what it sounds like. The mini-boss at the end of this area is one of the really, really big spiders. Not quite as big as a Rattra, mind, but close enough. 2 of 3 down. The third path brings us to one of the most beautiful areas in the game. A lush abyssal forest filled with boards, rockworms, jockos, and monkeys, called the Grove of Remnants. And conquering this area marks all 3 of 3 down. Returning to the Hermit's Cave, we can see a new portal has opened, and Blade Phantom senses a powerful force inside.
It cannot be. A life brought back by that power. Ozma, you finally succeeded.
That stone, the same chaos stench from El Ravnica.
The Dark Elf reveals herself to us as Balerion. He initially shows some confusion and shock at Khazan's appearance, saying out loud that Ozma finally succeeded in his goals. But that's all she says before the battle is initiated. Balerion is my least favorite boss in the game, unfortunately, and this is the only boss that took me longer to defeat on my second playthrough than they did on my first. Unsurprisingly, most of her attacks involve different magic types with different elements, but she has some melee attacks in there as well, though they're fewer and further between than even Trocca's were. All of her spells are annoying in some way or another. These skull conglomerates move so slowly that you can't even dodge forward too hastily, else they'll circle back around and get you. The individual skulls she fires just have to look at you the wrong way and they will chunk your health down. Her shockwave will cause heft buildup, her electric circles prevent you from getting too close, and the flame waves will come back and bite you in the ass for big damage and flame buildup if you're not careful. Mercifully though, most of these spells can be interrupted if you manage to stagger her, which does open a big window for damage. Periodically throughout the fight, she will summon help. These can vary from large skeletons that unleash one heavy attack before disappearing, to dogs that stay on the battlefield for an extended period, or can be killed beforehand. The most dangerous summon is this Skeletal Reaper, a completely unique enemy up to this point that can also summon skulls itself. While Balerion is inactive while the Skeletal Reaper is on the field, you may have noticed a bit of a pattern. There are so many projectiles in this fight, it can start to feel a little overwhelming. The absolute worst part of this fight is the blue bubble she periodically places on herself. Although Balerion can still take damage through the bubble, it completely removes the ability to stun her, which means every single attack she chooses to do cannot be interrupted until this bubble is destroyed. On my first playthrough, I used a spear, and destroying this bubble wasn't too bad, as I felt more comfortable with that than I did with dual wield, and I could comfortably keep up enough damage to destroy it fairly easily. But on my second playthrough, it felt absolutely hopeless trying to burst it, and this is why it took me almost an hour to kill her on my second playthrough, which is longer than it took on my first. The Hermit's soundtrack is the most hopeful of the entire game, because we don't actually want to kill Balerion. It's almost quiet at times, with an absolutely beautiful orchestra and female vocals doing the carrying. I feel an element of happiness in there, ever so slightly, wanting to reveal itself as hope. Defeating Balerion, we reveal, to her surprise, that we have no desire to kill her. Balerion reveals that she and Ozma were working together. She was researching necromancy, and he was studying magic. He was overtaken by the magic he was researching, and it became too powerful a temptation for him. He became so infected that he began sacrificing innocent people to further his research and gain more understanding of this terrible new force.
Bringing the dead back to life. It has been his obsession for a long time now. That's what brought him to me in the first place. I think there was someone he wanted to save. That's why, when I saw you, I thought he had finally succeeded.
Bringing the dead back to life? Who is it you want to bring back, Ozma?
Ozma is clearly using the magic to bring the dead back to life. But what is it that he wants to bring back? Balerion follows us back to the Crevice, and she asks for our help. A phantom that Balerion was close to called Atlante has been eaten by the Reaper, the same Reaper that Balerion herself summoned. Apparently, its hunger is insatiable, and it devours everything. Atlante is a powerful spirit, and seeking that power, the Reaper devoured her. Balerion says she's sure that Atlante would be in Khazan's debt if he saved her. What follows is a pretty short but challenging level. There are a lot of large undead here, like the greatsword-wielding and the rapier-wielding skeletons. Worst of all, though, are the archers, so cheekily placed everywhere to be as annoying as possible while you're fighting these, and the fact that these plague-emitting trees are everywhere. The Reaper fight is functionally identical to the one summoned by Balerion, probably because that's exactly what it is, but it does have a lot more health this time around. It doesn't make up for the fact that it is probably the boss with the least amount of attacks, in the entire game. Defeating it, we get access to Atlante the Precise as a new phantom ability, and she focuses on making the javelins more powerful. Valerian tells us that she summoned the Reaper unintentionally and wasn't expecting it to be so powerful, and thanks us for destroying it. Back at the Crevice, Tristan informs us that their scout has returned from a place called Visar, and that people there are killing each other as if possessed by some sort of madness. Someone named Scalpel is posted there, and Tristan is worried about his situation, knowing how similar it sounds to the outbreak at Aldavir. Scalpel is a good friend to Khazan and a loyal commander, and with Blade Phantom in agreement that the chaos spread must be stopped, we head out towards Visar. Immediately upon arrival, we can sense something is wrong. The Great Visar Gate is closed, which is only supposed to happen during times of war. There are also no guards to be seen. Tristan knows something is horribly awry, as Scalpel would not willingly let Visar be torn asunder. Very early on, we find a diary written by one Lantimos, someone who works closely with Scalpel. It details that when returning to Rebellion, Scalpel immediately sealed all the gates in the city, then ordered his soldiers to eliminate any outsiders and locked himself in his office. Nobody has seen him since, and any attempt to speak with him is greeted only with strange moans and murmurs behind the door. It's also detailed that the soldiers inside and outside the gate have succumbed to madness, and Scalpel is absolutely nowhere to be seen. Soon after finding this note, we descend into this lovely room. Oh no. Oh god, no. Visar itself is filled with corrupted Pel-Lost soldiers, just like Aldavir. We find a blade nexus at the end of the Great Bridge, but the gate is closed now with no easy way through. Naturally, we have to go around, and this involves killing a lot of Pel-Lost soldiers just chilling in the barracks. On the way around the side of the castle, we get jump scared by this guy who blew a hole in the wall for some reason. He was also hiding a treasure chest though. This section from the Visar Watchtower till the next Blade Nexus is one of the most difficult segments in the entire game. You've got a ton of powerful Pel-Lost soldiers, 2 massive ballistas aiming your direction that will be shooting at you, a beast of Rampage just chilling at the end of the first bridge, a bunch of corrupted assassins, a couple of Pel-Lost Arcane Knights, and to top it all off, a plague-infested elite Pel-Lost spearman with a shield. My favorite. We open the gate and make our way across the Great Bridge, reaching the courtyard to Visar Castle. We find it completely infected with plague. We do find a diary written by Scalpel, ranging over 15 days.
Once again, I found myself slaughtering my enemies today. General Khazan insists I grant them swift and merciful deaths. But with every swing of my blade, I'm consumed by an overwhelming euphoria. I fight to resist, but the scent of blood, it's intoxicating. His demand that I deny myself even that small pleasure feels unnecessarily cruel. After everything that happened in Rebellion, I'm starting to break. It's getting harder to hold myself together. Day 16. A forbidden coffin has long sat in the basement of my office. Ever since the purple light took hold of me, I've been seeing the bloody demon that lies inside. He whispers that he'll grant me euphoria if I give him blood in return. Lately, corpses have been piling up in my office. The air is thick with the scent of blood. Oh, demon of the coffin. Who's the real demon now?
Scalpel has truly succumbed to madness and is clearly using this coffin as a catalyst of some sort. I think we know at this point he's not going to be welcoming us with open arms. Before we enter Visar Castle, we hear a voice from our left. It's Lantimos, the author of the diary we found at the entrance to Visar and the squire to Commander Scalpel. Tells us a bit more about the plague, though he tells us nothing we don't already know. He does give us 2 more plague cleanse potions though, and reinforces the fact that Scalpel has locked himself in his study and refuses to come out, and he suggests that we go in to try and speak with him. He also mentions a Princess Elena, someone that Scalpel has been together with a lot recently, so much so that rumors have started that they're having a fling, but Lantimos suspects there's something more going on between them. Assuming that is the boss. Be very surprised if they aren't. It's Saxarius. Scalpel is not doing very well. Raise your hand if you're surprised. He doesn't even speak, he just screams and groans, probably out of sheer lust for more blood to satiate himself. Scalpel is one of the better bosses in the game, I think. He has a lot of different brutal attacks and even more grab attacks, which are hilarious. You get sucked into his coffin and then he impales you vertically before spitting you back out again. Grab attacks can be a bit of a pace ruiner, but that's alright, they're not too bad to dodge. Scalpel's sword attacks have a lot of weight in them. He drags the sword along the ground behind him before attacking for a lot of his swings, and slouches over with this giant coffin on his back. There was one issue I had with this particular brutal attack got me stuck behind his coffin, and I wasn't able to counterattack if this happened, but this seems to be patched, as I never had this issue on my second playthrough. I was still getting stuck behind the coffin, but the counterattacks went through now. Probably not the best way to fix this issue, as it's still very visually unintuitive, but it works. We're not sure what's inside the coffin, but it can grow arms and infect you with plague when he attacks with it. He has this really goofy looking attack where he jumps on top of the coffin and slides along the ground with it before stabbing it a few times to cause these arms and plague roots to sprout from it. Pretty funny, but rewarding if you manage to avoid the damage. Even his death animation is the best. My man falls to the ground and gets kidnapped by his own coffin, laying there for eternity. In one of the better fake-outs in the games I've played, Scalpel has an interesting and very difficult Phase 2. He goes absolutely crazy, doubling his combo length and slamming the coffin into the ground a lot more, filling the arena with plague. The thing is, you don't even need to fight him in this phase, as Scalpel is constantly bleeding out. Slowly, but surely. He still has some familiar combos in there though, so it's always good to take advantage of your knowledge of the first phase to get some more damage here in the second. His music is actually quite simple, having the least instrumentation of all the tracks in the game. What is prevalent are the low male vocals, likely representing Scalpel himself and or his loyal army. And these 6 notes, Scalpel's leitmotif. You'll be hearing these 6 notes quite a lot if you're dying to Scalpel. After defeating Scalpel, Khazan kneels in front of his fallen old comrade, as he watches yet another close friend of his perish at the hands of Chaos. Ozma's doing, he is filled with even more sadness and rage. We find out that Scalpel was actually tortured at the hands of Ozma directly because he knew what Ozma did to Khazan. Suddenly, a strong source of chaos starts forming behind Khazan, and Blade Phantom looks into the source before destroying it. He reveals once and for all that the Master of Chaos is indeed Ozma, and joyously reveals that in every sense, Khazan and Phantom's missions are aligned. Lantimos meets us here and tells us that he believes it was Scalpel meeting with Princess Elena that changed him, so to gain more answers, we head off to find her in Rebellion. Seems to be a bit of a pattern here, eh? Before we leave Visar Castle, we talk to Lantimos again, who asks for Khazan's help in finding a maid named Rosha who served Commander Scalpel, as they were very close, but he doesn't know where she is now. In exchange, he tells us where Scalpel and Princess Elena used to meet, so that maybe we can search there for some more information. This mission is essentially just the Great Visar Bridge with 3 elite enemies standing in between us and the Fog Gate. The first elite enemy is absolutely brutal. Definitely the hardest standard enemy in the game. These Pontiff Sullivan wannabes clone themselves and mirror what the standard one is doing, and they're just super difficult, and the damage windows are fewer and further between with these guys. At the end of the bridge we find a corrupted creation, one of these disgusting multi-limbed abominations that we fought a few times in the game. Unexpectedly though, a second one jumps in with the name Mutated Rosha. There really are no happy endings here. Hidden behind a secret bookshelf, we find a note confirming Scalpel was in love with the princess. Again, raise your hand if you're surprised. Tristan is concerned about the Sentinels of Vaisar. There's a high chance that they're dead, considering what has happened in the city and to Commander Scalpel, but he would still like to find out for himself, and is convinced that one of the Sentinels would have survived, and Khazan goes with him. Upon arrival, Tristan says that he heard the brothers Siban and Vernon might be alive. We do, however, find a note in the chapel written by their father.
Siban and Vermin, they've turned. They're corruptors now. How is a father supposed to raise his weapons against his own children? I would rather end my life with my own 2 hands. My dear Siban and Vermin, my sons. Please know that I love you.
It doesn't take us long to find the two brothers, both fully turned, taking on the form of twisted mages. I don't like this enemy type, and we've never had to fight 2 at once before. Killing them gives us the item, the brothers' merged hands. As the corruption consumed them, their hands came to rest against one another. May they hopefully find peace together in death. Blade Phantom wants to talk to us. He claims that he found a powerful sword underneath Vaisar Gate and insists that they go and collect it. This, unfortunately, has us return to the Wrecking Ball room again. And, well, honestly, roll the tape. Oh! Ah! Oh my god, I'm like... Cosmic! Oh my... Cosmic. There's a ball there! I've played these games before! After breezing through that last part of the level, we reach a large room guarded by an elite cleric, who drops his records, which says that to wield the sword, one must endure unimaginable suffering. Phantom tells us that it will call forth Khazan's past, his regrets, and he must overcome it. Yeah, thanks so much for this. Not only are you making me refight one of the worst fights in the game, but you're also making me remember. I don't want to remember. Khazan is now able to wield the sword, and Phantom absorbs its power. The Frona appears, unfortunately, and speaks to us in the condescending, sarcastic, yet alluring voice we all know well until this point. Tells Phantom that she knew about his desire for the sword. Lord Charon knows as well, and also knows that he will take it back as soon as Phantom's mission is complete. We're off to Rebellion now, to try and find Princess Elena. Upon our arrival at the theatre, Phantom alerts us that there's something strange about the painting at the end of the hall, and sure enough, walking into it teleports us to inside the banquet hall. This mission is probably the most visually spectacular in the entire game. The hall is enormous and vaulted, with engravings and statues of humans and beasts decorating the walls. There's a sense of faded grandeur and memories of sumptuous luxury throughout the entire place, but is now being overshadowed by decay and chaos. We get welcomed to the banquet hall by a mysterious voice, presumably coming from the purple, ghost-like woman on the level above. She asks us if we can hear the melody of death echoing in the air, while firing magic projectiles from various instruments she has hovering in front of her. Setting itself apart from the other missions even further, the banquet hall is a very vertical mission. We slowly make ourselves up higher in the hall using elevators and various staircases on the outside. There's some genuinely great level design here, which to me shows that Neopol are very much capable of it. No game is perfect, of course, and I've mentioned before that the level design is arguably the weakest aspect of this one. That's why it was so refreshing to finally encounter something so different and genuinely well crafted. As you proceed further up the banquet hall, we can interact with the ghost woman, but she just disappears and reappears on a platform higher up. Though every time we interact with her, she says something unexpected.
Kill me, please. Say you are, but you need to do it before what's inside me kills you.
Igor is here again, and his story continues into him reiterating once again that his wife, who was his everything, has died. The nobleman who was interested in his wife invited her and Igor to a grand party, with Igor coming to sing for all of the guests. He was excited at this invitation, but upon his arrival at the venue, he found no guests, no party or fun. He instead saw his own wife slain at the hands of this nobleman. He doesn't say any more for now, except for the fact that he has come to this banquet hall to reminisce about his wife, with memories of singing and dancing. We reach the top of the banquet hall and defeat the Reaper that the purple ghost summons. She then begs us to put an end to the torment of her corrupted soul, and that she waits for our final performance. Very shortly after this encounter, next to a beautiful golden grand piano, we find a memoir about Princess Elena.
The princess has been refusing lessons lately. I asked if something was wrong, but she wouldn't even open the door. She simply said she wasn't available. There's talk going around that she's terrified of something and that she smashed all the glass and mirrors in her room. It breaks my heart. I can only hope for the day when the princess, so talented and full of promise, will play her piano again.
I probably should have put this jigsaw together sooner, but it was at this point that I presumed the purple ghost was Princess Elena herself, consumed by the purple power of chaos.
Seeing you now, I can hold back no longer. May I present my masterpiece, the Symphony of Chaos. My anger, pain, and despair blended into one. And now your death scream will be its final crescendo!
Princess Elena. A princess. I don't think I've killed one of those before.
Princess Elena commences our final performance, and although I don't really think the fight is bad, I think she is unfortunately one of the more forgettable fights. She's very fast, constantly pirouetting all over the shop, using a rapier to deliver some extremely rapid thrusting attacks. Because of how fast they are, I actually struggle quite a lot to differentiate between them, and think she's one of the more difficult bosses to brink guard consistently. On the other hand, she's not particularly unforgiving, which is nice, as I quite often missed my brink guards. Phase 2 allows her to start casting magic as well, and she'll always start this phase with this purple orb attack that drags along the ground. You have to walk to the other side of the platform to avoid damage from the orbs. On one hand, I quite like this attack. It's cinematic and engaging without being overwhelming. It even summons a hooded audience in the background with a spooky whispering stinger. On the other hand though, it's quite a pace ruiner. For such a fast-paced skirmish, having an attack that basically involves standing still in one spot for a few seconds is quite jarring. All of her magic attacks are accompanied by an unsettlingly out-of-tune piano note, which continues to add to the musical theme of this entire mission. Since Elena herself was a pianist, it's actually pretty haunting to hear her use that previous talent of hers so aggressively. Elena also gets access to the same magical protection bubble that Valerian had, but it's a lot less durable this time around, and Elena doesn't completely rely on magic spam. So although it's pretty annoying, it's not absolutely egregious like it is for Valerian. Elena's soundtrack, the Pellos Requiem, is one of my favorite tracks in the game. There's a beautiful mix of male and female vocals to create this symphony that, to me, resembles an audience watching one of Elena's performances, or indeed playing that performance themselves, as though the released soundtrack doesn't include this version, the song actually starts off with just the piano, and it isn't until Phase 2, when the audience is summoned, that the vocals kick in. It starts off very melodically in Phase 1, but then gets a lot louder and more desperate in Phase 2, and I interpret that as Alina becoming more powerful and desperate, or rather, the chaos inside her becoming as such. I'd also like to mention that Alina plays her own leitmotif throughout the entire mission on the hovering instruments. A really nice touch. With no strength left, Alina thanks us for putting her torment to an end. And now, after all this time, all the hoops we've had to jump through, she tells us where Ozma is.
My torment is at an end. Thank you. Go. Get to the Imperial Palace in Vetelana. Ozma is there. You know what to do, Khazan. End this evil.
The Imperial Palace in Vetelon is where we must go. The princess also drops an unsent letter written to her by Scalpel, revealing that both she and him were planning to try and stop Ozma. Before heading to Vetelon, there's a side mission involving returning to the Rebellion Theatre to search for more information about Ozma's plans and to find out more about what Scalpel and Princess Alina were planning and search for any potential survivors. Despite the level being so short, I'd say it's actually pretty difficult. It's filled with specters of Pell Lost soldiers, and as I said before, the guys with the spears are some of the hardest standard enemies in the game for me, and some of them now have shields, and there's a ton of them. The Centurions here call themselves the Owls, and we find a few Lacrima strands throughout the mission, giving us a glimpse of their final moments. They get overrun and retreat to the second floor of the building. At the second floor, we fight the 99th Owl, which is a slightly different version of the Beasts of Rampage. He drops his will upon death.
It looks like I'm the only one left now, after Ozma turns all of my comrades into corruptors. Maybe it would be better if they took me out too. But what about Spawn? Is he okay? He must have been eagerly awaiting today to see his brother at the Wiser Gate.
We conclude there are no survivors, and we find out nothing about Ozma's plans. We begrudgingly return to the Crevice. Tristan informs us that there's been another disappearance. A merchant group traveling through El Ravnica have gone missing, and Tristan is suspicious that it is related to Elamain's death. Arriving at the fishing hamlet at El Ravnica, we find a giant purple portal opening up inside one of the huts. Phantom states the obvious, claiming that it's a trap, but we decide to go in anyway. We're teleported to a huge chamber inside the El Ravnica laboratory, and upon interacting with the Lacrima strand coming out of the dead merchant, we are locked inside by 9 magic portals. A few waves of enemies come from the portals, starting with small spiders. The second wave are some medium spiders, and finally, a large spider emerges from the big portal. Curiously, these smaller portals disappear after this, but we're not done yet. As a climax, an elite corrupted creation emerges from the large portal. Dying at any point means we have to do all waves again. We're then teleported to another section of the laboratory, and in there, we find Elamain's diary.
I still can't believe I'm actually going to accompany General Khazan. I've dreamed of this day ever since I was little. It feels like just yesterday when General Khazan came to our village and defeated the Dragon King that were attacking us. I begged to go with him, but my parents, embarrassed, held me back. Despite my spoiled nature, General Khazan spoke to me with nothing but respect. He told me, "Become strong so you can help others." "I will," I promised him. That simple vow became my oath, and now the time has come to show him what I've become. I only hope my strength will be useful to him.
So the child was you, Elamain.
We also find another note written by Tanya, the woman who conducted the Chaos experiments on Maluka. She details the fact that she too underwent transformation when she submitted to Ozma's experiments. She says that she embraced it, and it strengthened her, and she thought it would do the same to Elamane and bring them both closer to Ozma. As we know, this experiment failed due to a malfunction in the injector. The boss of this mission is Tanya herself, and we can see that she's been transformed into what's called a Saint of Sin, a sort of succubus-looking thing with large wings and 2 snakes acting as a catalyst for laser attacks and their tail. After Tanya is defeated, Tristan appears and tells us that he found Elamane's ring while walking through the facility, and we get a really wholesome cutscene of Elamane and Khazan bonding in the past, before the disasters.
I owe you my life. I'll lead the way. I want to be there for you. Just as you've helped others, I want to do the same. I have to do this. I made a promise.
Elamane.
In Vitellon City, a massive capital with the Imperial Palace in sight. But it's still a long way away. The city is in absolute ruins. Nobody remains. The streets are filled with Pellos soldiers, fires are alight everywhere, and rubble has cluttered the ground you stand on. Further into the city, we encounter these large purple rocks that explode when you hit them. These have been infecting everybody in the city and turning them into corruptors. While these are dangerous, I realized pretty quickly that you can actually use these to your advantage, as these are a guaranteed stagger on any enemy in range of the explosion, including the massive ones like the Beasts of Rampage. We arrive at the main street, but unfortunately the bridge has been destroyed, and we have to make our way around. We meet Andal again, a soldier we spoke to a while ago back in Polemian. He's come back to Vitellon to look for his Siona, a woman who he loves. He joined the Knives Vale in the past to try and earn enough money to impress Siona's family, who never approved of him due to not being very rich or fancy, but it never worked out. He still wants to make sure Siona is alright though, and so asks Khazan for his help. We make our way through the absolutely disgusting sewer system and back up to the surface, where we find a disgruntled note documenting the transport of something enormous.
We finally made it to Vitellon from Raw Canyon. The trip took us 2 whole months. I can't believe they made us haul the Berserk Dragon, of all things. I heard they're planning to put it up in the city square to showcase the Empire's glory. The locals' faces when they saw the dragon were exactly what I expected, filled with dread and horror. Sure, it's just a corpse now, but it's hard to shake the feeling that it could wake up at any moment.
Hismar transport log. I don't like the implications of that, to be honest. So you're telling me they've hauled the corpse of Hismar all the way to Vitellon for the sole purpose of putting his cadaver on display for the city? Digor's final location is here, and it is now that he shares his final verse with us. He sought vengeance on the nobleman that killed his wife, and says that his mission of vengeance is not all that different to Khazan's. He tells us that the corpse beneath their feet is a creature dying from spider venom and plague. Now, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe the implication is that, parallel to Khazan's journey, Digor's been on one of his own, to kill this very nobleman who killed his wife, and he has killed this man with spider venom. If this is the case, which I do think is likely, then it's a nice little bow on this unfortunate story. We also encounter Siona in the library, along with a few other survivors. Siona is pleased to see Khazan, and she tells him about what happened. He explains that chaos started destroying the buildings, and people started getting corrupted and dying. We tell her that Andal is here as well, and she is elated. This is enough motivation for her to keep fighting. Pushing further onward, we finally find ourselves at the other end of the main street, and at a massive gate outside what seems to be a giant gladiatorial arena.
Is it truly Hismar?
See where the chaos energy is going. There is much danger here. Good. Let us investigate it.
It's been a while, old friend.
The 14th boss in the First Berserker Khazan is Hismar, the Berserk Dragon himself. The same Berserk Dragon that Khazan and Ozma has killed before. Influenced by the power of chaos, the corpse has been resurrected, and now Khazan must take him down again. I did latch onto the implication that this was going to happen, but I actually wasn't expecting them to go through with it. I've seen a lot of people complain about this fight, saying that the camera is terrible, attacks whiff constantly, and that he has too much health. My thoughts on this fight are, yeah, it does suffer occasionally from a wonky camera, and especially with attacks whiffing, but I never understood the health complaints. Every boss in this game has a lot of health, and Hismar is simply no exception. There has never been a ginormous dragon fight like this that has been made perfect. Dark Eater Midir, Baal the Dread, they all suffer from the same thing. It's impossible for the camera to capture everything at once, especially when going underneath the dragon is actually a viable position. However, and I'm not just saying this because I'm shilling this game, I find this a rare problem with Hismar, and being positioned in front of his face has the camera behave well 95% of the time. Attacks whiffing, however, is definitely a problem. The lock-on only allows you to attach the camera to his head, meaning that his hands aren't a way to reliably deal damage to him, despite them being the two parts of his body that are in attack range the most. His head is always above ground, except for a few attacks where he smashes his face into the ground. And then when he does lower its head, it's enough for maybe 1 or 2 attacks. This leads to a few idle moments after claw swings that look like the ideal time to deal damage, but attacking him when his head is above the ground is such a dice roll, as your attacks are likely to go underneath his head. I think people who say Hismar have too much health think that because of this whiffing issue. If every attack that whiffed, in fact, landed, his health bar wouldn't seem as ginormous. Brutal attacks also absolutely chunk him. They deal more damage to Hismar than the other bosses, which sort of makes the health bar a bit of an illusion. The fight is visually spectacular. It's not sensory overload either. Even his giant lasers and fire breath attacks are easy to follow, and when you do land your hits, the melee attacks and head smashes are very satisfying to punish. You can also break his horns if you deal enough damage to them, which will stagger him for a very long time, separately from his usual stamina bar depletion staggers. Howl of Ruin is the name of Hismar's soundtrack, and it's awesome. It's a very open stage track with powerful vocals. I'm not a music critic, if that wasn't clear from my awful critiques of the track so far, so I'm not sure of the praise for this. The track just feels large, like Hismar himself. Khazan unleashes the power of anime and once again impales his Lacrima-infused axe into the head of Hismar, knocking the lumbering beast back, killing him and destroying an entire wall of the arena in the process. Julian is worried about his family in Vitalon, and Khazan feels compelled to go with him to help ensure their safety. Upon their arrival, they agree to split up and rendezvous at Julian's family mansion. Immediately upon dropping to the Blade Nexus, a man named Boris shouts for Khazan's attention and asks him to try and alleviate some of the dangerous corruptors in the village. Vitalon's in an even worse condition than before, with the purple chaos rocks showing up here now as well. A woman named Evelyn is standing behind a closed gate and asks for the same thing as Boris. She's afraid and tells Khazan that the corruptors are disguising themselves as the citizens, but all they do is hurt people. Further into the village, we find a dead girl on a balcony, and interacting with the Lacrima strand tells us that this is in fact Evelyn's little sister, who expresses concern that Evelyn has grown wings? Dropping into the next area, we see Evelyn was in fact disguising herself as a human, and she has been turned into a saint of sin. We also find out that Boris has transformed as well, and acts as the boss of the mission. Evelyn was disguising herself, she had already turned, but it's my understanding that Boris hadn't turned when we spoke to him. In that short time, he has already been transformed into this beast. This just shows how quickly Chaos turns everything it touches. Boris drops an unsent letter to Julian from his wife, who tells him that she has fled with their children to an unnamed safe house and prompts him to find them there instead. Khazan tells Julian to go to his family, however, Julian declines, satisfied in the knowledge that his wife is now safe, as he confirms the letter is written in her handwriting. He insists, despite Khazan telling him multiple times to leave. His loyalty truly is unmatched, and he clearly respects Khazan as much as to stick with him through hell or high water. Back in the Crevice, Defrona tells Phantom that we need to collect Charon's chains in order to defeat Ozma. We're not sure what the reason is yet, but we head to the Vitalon Underground to get them. What follows is undoubtedly the shortest mission in the entire game, with the Fog Gate being right next to the first Sword Nexus. The mission is essentially a mini-boss rush. A Netherworld Jocko, Tigron, and Aratra spawn from a Netherworld portal in the middle of the room. Dying, of course, means you have to start again. After the defeat of the Aratra, Charon's chains do appear before us. Phantom approaches them, but gets entangled and trapped in them. He accuses Defrona of tricking them, but she says otherwise.
You tricked us.
Tricked you? No. Surely you remember that day. The day you tried to defy Lord Charon. Bound in chains, your rebellion is no more.
You cannot defy me.
The chains belong to the Netherworld. and only netherworld beings can carry them. Therefore, I've placed them within Phantom.
Damn it! Remove them at once!
You cannot defeat the Master of Chaos without them. Do you really want them gone? Again, don't forget the day you made a pact with Lord Carol. One false move, and those chains will tighten around your neck.
Damn it.
Good. Then now you are ready to face your destiny.
Still not sure why we need Charon's chains to defeat Ozma. Does placing them inside Phantom mean that we deal some sort of special netherworld damage to him? Or did Defroner actually trick Phantom into getting these chains attached to him? I'm honestly not sure. Finally, before we head further towards the Imperial Palace, Yulian has more concerns about the Knives Vale. They've re-established themselves yet again in Vitalon, which is surprising since Rankus and Meluka have both been dealt with. They've appointed a new leader named Gilsun, and Andal and Siona have dispatched to deal with him. They both wait for us at Vitalon and tell us that they are determined to kill Gilsun and put an end to the Knives Vale once and for all, and while protecting the city they both love. There are some dragonkin on the streets of Vitalon now, probably because of the death of Hismar, although if I had heard the Berserk Dragon himself had been slain by the same opponent again, the site of the incident would be the last place I'd want to go. We make our way through the streets and into a large hotel building, which is where the leader of the Knives Vale is currently holding up. Unfortunately, we find Andal dead on the ground with Siona leaning over him. We speak to her and, understandably, she's lost all hope. Gilsun killed him after he discovered Andal was following him, and he couldn't let a traitor live. Gilsun is in the next room and is an even more bulky version of the Dual Dagger Knives Vale variants, with a couple of chump archers to help him out. Upon his defeat, we get a brief cutscene showing his past, with him being used as entertainment at a grand party when he was a slave. This caused him to see the partygoers as monsters, laughing at his misfortune. This is when he met Meluka and joined his ranks. Siona follows us into here and apologizes for being upset at Andal's death. I mean, it's totally fine, you just watched your husband get assassinated in front of you. She said that she contemplated joining him in the afterlife, but decided not to waste the life that he gave her, and continues to protect the things that they held dear, and that includes the royal city of Vitalon.
Khazan, won't you join us for once?
The three of us together again.
I know you're always busy, but it would mean everything to us if you came to our wedding.
So many special moments. It's the perfect place to be married. Remember, Khazan, we'll always be together.
Sad. That's the word I can use to describe this entire mission. The Great Temple is between Vitalon and the Imperial Palace, and the home to Rhys, Ozma's wife. Khazan was great friends with Ozma and Reese, and from the second you step foot in the Great Temple, with the melancholic music in the background and the pink tulip petals drifting slowly through the air, you can't help but feel a bit sad, but at peace as well. If anyone is safe from Ozma's reign of chaos, it's the wife that he loves dearly. In the courtyard, we interact with a Lacrima strand belonging to a frantic hierarch, asking Reese if she's okay shortly before their death. The implications of that are grim, but surely Ozma's own wife is fine, right? We make our way along the cliffs to the main temple area. I like this area a lot. It's visually distinct for the most part from the other areas in the game. It doesn't take long for us to get back to the main temple though, and there's another dead soldier with a Lacrima strand. This belongs to Temple Knight Villadus, who asks Lady Reese to forgive him for failing to protect her. Look, I'm not going to patronize anybody. We know what the game is implicating here. I was still naively very hopeful. I honestly thought there's absolutely no way that Ozma would let chaos consume his own wife, or perhaps he or Reese had found a way to, I don't know, reverse it, or make her impervious, or at least have it not affect her very much at all, you know? Khazan reminisces about this place. He spent many a great pleasant day here with his friends, and is upset to see the place in such ruin. Chaos truly has taken everything. A little further on is probably the most beautiful room in the entire game. The golden accents decorating the walls, the dim lights from the candles adorning the pillars, and the light from the sky shining off the Saintess statue with the stairs wrapping around it. Really nice. But sadly, we can't go in there directly just yet, so we have to go around. We do make it into that beautiful room eventually though, and we fight a golem mini-boss. And these are easy and satisfying to kill, so that's nice. Unlike these revenant devourers that immediately follow. Seriously, I hate these fish. Reese is just through these doors. I enter, hopeful and optimistic, but knowing full well what probably waits for me. And, well, see for yourself. No, fuck you, game.
Reese?
Khazan, my beloved old friend.
No, Ozma, you wouldn't dare. Not her too.
Join us.
Oh my god. Fuck you.
Reese, stop! Please!
How am I supposed to fight with tears in my eyes, dude? I have never, ever cried before a boss fight. This is absolutely the best game in this genre that I have ever played. It breaks my heart, man. Khazan shouting for her to stop as well, it just hurts inside. Reese is my favorite boss in the entire game. The aesthetic, her moveset, the absolutely incredible soundtrack, the emotional impact, everything about this fight is unbelievably good. Never have I ever wanted to fight a boss less than I wanted to fight Reese. For story reasons, of course. Her first phase involves her attacking almost exclusively with magic, with her wielding a catalyst for such spells. She's got quite a lot of them too, not to the extent of Valerian, but certainly more than Princess Alina. Interestingly, she can conjure up these walls of light that block anything from going through them, including her own magic projectiles, so although you can't walk through them, you can use them to your advantage. You can also break them as well. Just in case you had any hopes whatsoever of Rhys getting out of this unharmed, she completely succumbs to chaos for a second phase of the fight, where she incorporates a fair amount of melee attacks into her repertoire. Some of these combos have this really satisfying visual flair when you brink guard them, making them feel even better too. Rhys's soundtrack is probably the most iconic, and for good reason. Anybody who has played the game likely remembers her track being a standout, unless you're a freak that plays with music volume off. Phase 1 is a perfect example of a sad, unwilling boss fight. Extremely powerful female vocals taking the lead focus, clearly representing the Bride of Despair herself. But the music doesn't let go of hope entirely. For every time the song is quiet and sad, it repays with a brief period of morbid, bombastic intensity. Phase 2 waves goodbye entirely for any hope the piece once had. Rhys has become completely transformed by chaos, and now Khazan must fight for his life. The sheer desperation of the song only increases as it goes on, with the vocal high notes only continuing to get higher. The sum of its parts truly makes Rhys a top highlight of the game for me. It's truly peak. I don't think she's a particularly difficult fight, but I'm of the opinion that bosses do not have to be difficult to be good. Defeated and exhausted, Rhys falls to the ground for one last time.
Ozma, my love. If I could only see you. One love.
Khazan, I believe in you, so I ask you.
No. Impossible.
Save Ozma.
Rhys, come back. It was the real Rhys.
Enough of this. We must finish this, mortal. Do what must be done.
Yes. You're right, Phantom. Ozma. he did all this. We will find him and make him pay.
We're one step away from defeating Ozma. After all he's done, my motivation, and indeed Khazan's motivation to kill this man is at an all-time high. We leave for the Great Temple and make our way to the Imperial Palace. Before we head there though, we have one final side mission. Defrona has discovered the location that Ozma used to frequent, and we use this as one last opportunity to find out more about his plans and motivations. In this mission, we follow a soldier named Pluvius, who is a close protector of Rhys's, just like Villadus. He acts as the boss of this level, and behind him is Rhys's bedroom. Even in death, he is trying to protect her and her property. We find a note from Rhys to Pluvius, asking him to help escort her and Ozma out of Vitalon. The day that letter was written was also her and Ozma's wedding day, but Emperor Palmeria wanted Rhys to become his concubine. Ozma was still unhappy after Hismar's defeat, seeing the world as still being full of evil, and became obsessed with trying to find ways to be rid of it all. To kill two birds with one stone, Rhys seeked out Pluvius to help her and Ozma escape. But enough of this. Let's go to the Imperial Palace and put an end to chaos once and for all. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, chaos has fully overtaken the Imperial Palace. Strangely, the final mission in the game includes 3 new things we haven't seen until this point. First of all, we become the target of these chaos meteors. They don't track very well and there's plenty of places to hide, but it's still nice to have a unique environmental hazard introduced. Secondly, we have moving platforms. Absolutely revolutionary. There's no jump button in Khazan, so I can kind of understand why they're used so scarcely, but with there being very little verticality in many of the game's levels, there's not been a great opportunity to have them. Thirdly, the Yoma are now summoning these totems that are protected by a magic bubble, just like Balerion and Princess Alina. I'm not entirely sure of their purpose or whether they're buffing the enemies nearby or not, but I always made it my top priority to take them out regardless. Visually, the level is great. Heading up to the tower with the Chaos Storm ahead, knowing what's at the top, it's a very good final level with a lot of appropriate tension as you make your way up, using the hovering, crumbling ruins of the palace to gain elevation. It's also here that you'll likely get your last Jarling and Soulstone for the playthrough. Hopefully that'll keep Defrona and Danjin happy. Speaking of Defrona, she is here. She's here to ask us what we'll do when we finally meet the Master of Chaos. This is the only dialogue choice in the game that makes any difference as far as I'm aware. Throughout the game and the various side missions, I've been collecting a lot of notes called The Day the Black Moon Rose, Prophecy, Rhys, and Hismar Conquest. All of these notes have been written by Ozma himself, and provide extremely vague and small snippets of insight into Ozma's life. Collecting all 15 of these will unlock the third dialogue choice. I must know the truth. There are 3 endings in total, but we'll wrap back around to these choices and prerequisites afterwards. So, here we are. This staircase leads us to the finale, the fight we've been waiting for. So let's do it. You've been waiting over 2 hours for this. So let's go and fight the Master of Chaos. But there's something really sad about all of this. These 2 men were once great friends, and that bond has been broken by a force of unprecedented power. Rhys, Ozma's very own wife, falling victim to it at his own hand. Elamain, a soldier who wanted nothing but to protect the people she cares about, consumed by it. Galpal, another trusted friend to Khazan and respected leader, completely destroyed at the hands of chaos. Fewer have there been times where I have had this much motivation and drive to kill a powerful foe. This fight is not just for Khazan, It's for Rhys, it's for Elamain, it's for Scalpel, Pavel, Tristan, Lydia, Andal, everybody whose lives have been forever lost or ruined at Ozma's hand. It's time to end this.
Khazan, how you must have suffered to be here.
Ozma, what happened to you?
Do you remember the day we fought Hismar? I thought if we defeated him, we could save the world. But I was wrong. The real problem was humanity itself. They murder each other, feed off each other like parasites, an endless cycle of life and death. We risked everything for them. Despite our efforts to save the Empire, humanity brought us ruin. And Rhys. They even killed Rhys.
To someone you loved.
Because my Rhys is gone. And what you meant was an empty shell. Completely meaningless. Humanity has crossed the final line. But you can still stand with me, Khazan. Together, we can restore order to this twisted world.
I didn't come here to stand by your side again. I'm here to make you pay for your crimes. All of them. For what you did to me, to my men, and most of all for what you did to Rhys.
I see. So be it. Then this...
Ozma is a very difficult boss fight. So many attacks, so many elements. Whatever you can name, Ozma has it. Frost, chaos, electricity, fire, heft, melee, magic, ginormous area-wide AoEs, soul mass, brutal attacks, chaos tornadoes, even attacks that restore his own stamina. He has it all. There's absolutely no mercy here. His health bar is just as big as any other boss in the game, and has quite a small window for ripostes as well. It's a brutal fight. If you thought that wasn't difficult enough, there's a second phase to this fight that gets even crazier than the first. He starts flying around the arena using the giant claw wings he grows, throwing rapid melee attacks your way. He gets access to many more magic attacks, mainly chaos this time, including a couple of these very cinematic spectacles where he flies into the air, and one where he summons a bunch of smaller arrows, even one where he summons a giant arrow. both of which rewarding you with a massive window for damage if you can avoid the follow-up. Ozma's soundtrack is exactly what you'd expect from a climax of this proportion. It's loud and bombastic, with powerful low male vocals taking the front focus in the first phase. Second phase introduces the electric guitar, something that has been present in the game's soundtrack, mainly for Maluka, another Chaos servant, really shredding those riffs. And finally, at last, after an hour and 40 minutes of attempts, we get through his second phase and put an end to the madness.
Khazan. Chaos is the only true salvation!
What? That's right. Ozma has 3 phases, if you collect all of the lore pieces. The third phase is essentially just the second phase with a lot less health and more vulnerability to brutal attacks. It sort of acts as a victory lap, but if you don't know it's coming and it catches you off guard, it's the last thing that you want. It's not easy by any means, but the many attempts at phases 1 and 2 only help you to prepare for it. It goes without saying, though, that dying to the third phase means you go all the way back to the beginning again. After about 3 or 4 brutal attacks in the third phase, the fight is well and truly over. I really like the fight with Ozma. I think it's really great that the finale feels this climactic and as difficult as this does. Ozma gets ensnared by Charon's chains, Khazan runs forward and impales Ozma with the Netherworld blade. In a moment of clarity, Ozma apologizes to Khazan for everything he's done.
Khazan, I'm sorry. Ozma.
This is the true ending. Completely exhausted, Khazan returns to the lower level of the palace.
Phantom, show yourself. It's over. It's all over.
With some brilliant voice work by Ben Starr, he screams for Phantom to show himself, but he doesn't. It's all over.
The Empire fell, reduced to ruins, leaving Khazan with nothing. The weight of killing Ozma with his own hands is now a deep, haunting nightmare that clings to him. Despite knowing there's nothing more to be done, he returns to the place where Ozma's memory still lives.
This is the true ending, called the First Berserker ending. Khazan returns to Ozma's home and reminisces about their past. Finds a wooden sword, one that he gave to Ozma when they were young, so they could train together, a tea set that Khazan gave to Reese many years ago, and a Lacrima strand in the basement, revealing what really happens to her, murdered at the hand of the Emperor's Guard. And finally, painting of the three of them together. Here you can read all of the 15 collectibles in order, and there's a repeated mention of something called the Eye. From this, Blade Phantom deduces that there is a mastermind behind everything. Khazan is motivated by his revenge, but that is all he has. He must track down the person who fed Palmeria a bogus prophecy about Khazan and Ozma. The person puppeteering the Eye, the one who guided Ozma to discovering the power of chaos.
The influence of the Eye is clear in everything you've lost.
I thought I had lost everything, but I was wrong. I still have
cheese cake.
My revenge.
That was the true ending. The second ending, called Chain, is only slightly different. When speaking to Defrona at the end, you get this ending by collecting all of the lore notes, but selecting a different dialogue option other than I must know the truth. He places a flower in front of the painting of the three of them, and peacefully asks Blade Phantom to leave him. Phantom, however, declines, as Charon commands him to stay, as chaos is still rampant. The third ending, Normal, is achieved by just not collecting all the lore notes. Khazan places no flower, and Phantom remains inside him. Either way, it's presumed that Khazan sets off on a mission to find the puppet master behind this Eye. Does this confirm a sequel? Well, possibly. I certainly hope so. So, there we have it. That was the first Berserker Khazan. I absolutely adore this game. The combat really hit different for me. The music, enemy variety, and boss designs are quite outstanding, and I really hope if Nexon creates a sequel or a game in a similar vein with similar gameplay that they improve upon what this game does poorly, such as level design. In any case, Nexon, you have my loyalty and my wallet should you decide to continue Khazan's story. Should you play the first Berserker Khazan? In my completely unbiased opinion, if you enjoy any of these games on screen, yes, you absolutely should play this game. Don't get me wrong, you probably won't find it groundbreaking like I do, but even if you don't, I think you're almost guaranteed to get a kick out of this game's combat. It's a fantastic game, and I'm very, very glad I decided to play it. Hi everyone, I probably should have shaved before I recorded this part, but oh well. I'm sticking in this unscripted segment in the video here just to show my appreciation for a few people. This video was an absolutely massive undertaking for me. I work a full-time job and I don't have an editor, any of this stuff, so I had to do everything myself, basically. So I honestly would not have had the motivation to do this if it weren't for these people's support. Firstly, I want to thank all of my Twitch chat for enduring 2 full playthroughs of this game. All I did was gush about the game and fail and die miserably. And I want to thank all of these people on screen now for lending me their voice to this video. I was talking for 3 hours straight, basically, for this video, so I did want, a bit of variety in the voices, so thank you very much to everyone involved in that. And I'd also like to thank Miss Chalice and Josh Strife Hayes, who both have no idea who I am and don't even know I exist, but they inspired me to make a video like this. And of course, I want to thank all of you guys for sticking around. I really, really appreciate it. The first Berserker Khazan did not sell as much as the developers or the publisher had hoped, and this really saddens me. If miraculously somebody from Neopol or Nexon watches this, please Please be proud of your game. I know I'm not the only person that loves this game and thinks this way about the first Berserker. If you couldn't tell, I absolutely love it, and I would happily pay for a sequel. Finally, I know the video is not going to be perfect, but I really hope I can provide at least one person out there a few hours of entertainment. If you enjoyed this, please do let me know. It would mean the world to me. But yes, I am done now. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.